So.
All right, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. If you would all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Roll call, please, Patty.
Gilman,
Here.
Horn. Here. Lehman.
Here.
Underwood.
Here.
Kevin.
Present. Okay, next item is approval of the agenda. We don't have any blue sheets, so I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented unless someone wants to make any changes.
Support.
Right, motion by Commissioner Underwood, support by Commissioner Horn to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. It passes. Next item, conflict of interest. Do any members of the Road Commission Board have any conflict of interest regarding any items on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Move on to public comment, and I heard that we have someone here who actually is here for public comment.
I do,
So if you could please let Kylie read the rules and then.
certainly.
It's very exciting.
Any person may make an advance appointment with the board regarding road commission tactics for a regular or special meeting in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. If an appointment is made, the topic will be an agenda item. The following applies to public comments. Please state his or her name and or in township or district. Topic must be relevant to the road commission. Individuals are allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes on a single topic, which may be extended by the chair. A group addressing the board requires a designated spokesperson who may speak up to 10 minutes, and the board will not act on any item from the public that is not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, this may violate the rules, but I'm gonna go ahead anyway. I think that,
Can you introduce yourself?
sorry, Matthew Lundy, Garfield Township. The thing I want to talk about is, possibly getting some zipper merge signs for any kind of road construction that has more than 2 lanes. There's been considerable backups on 31 by 72 going into town from Acme, and to the point where there's been semis like in the middle of the intersection of 31 and 72. I just think that the zipper merge signs would do a lot of good. If we could get some, I know I've seen them in other places around the state through my travels, and I don't think it would be unreasonable to have that.
Okay.
That's really what I want to say.
Thank you very much. And I just want to say that I share Mr. Lundy's frustration with that because, and I was actually gonna talk to our Public Relations Committee, Joe and Commissioner Underwood, Commissioner Horn, because I think that may be a project for our PR company to maybe do some videos because it's very relevant right now during the construction season. So maybe we can do some
That's a great idea.
videos or something that, because I think the idea is that
I mean, it's
people
not that
don't
it
know.
hasn't been on Facebook or
Yeah, we
other
just have to
places
do
in
a
the
better
public.
job promoting it.
But
Does it
yeah.
matter that that's not our roads though, that it's a state highway project?
Mhm.
No, we'll have to talk to them.
We can't put
Like, we
signs,
can't put signs.
Yeah, we
on
can't
it.
put
They're
signs.
Not our road.
but we can do some public education.
Yeah.
on that.
Doesn't mean we can't say something about it.
Right.
Yeah.
We can put signs
I like
because
it.
it's not our project. But for example, I think that is very timely because for some reason, if people just feel that if you're using that method, you're cutting in front of them and you start.
Yeah.
cutting
You're
in the
right.
middle of the
People
road.
get angry.
Yeah, they
I
get
would
very
also add
Very
that the merge sign, I think, needs to be a lot closer to where the actual merging takes place. Right now, it's probably 200-300 yards away from where the actual merge is. So people think that they need to get into this lane. And it's just, I think it's very confusing for the public. For whatever reason in this state, and this is all over the state, it's certainly not a problem that's unique to us. People just decide that to be polite or whatever, they need to get over, and then, I'm getting yelled at for trying to zipper merge, and usually I just give them the finger, but,
Right.
I'm about ready to go to a craft shop and get a zipper and just hold it out the window. But I think, yeah, that's really what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take off. That's all I really.
Sure.
But
Don't
good to
wanna
see
hang
you.
out?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks. And others that maybe I haven't seen before.
In a while.
So, yeah, thank you guys.
Well, I texted Susan just to let her know to add that to our priority list of
Good.
topics to
Yeah.
cover.
Think my computer.
All right, the next, we move on to our action items. The first item is the Hampshire Drive SAD, the approval of bid. Dan? Did you?
Yeah,
Okay,
there's that one. We did receive 2 bids on this project, one from J&N, the other one for Elmer's. We did look the project over and they were comfortable with J&N bidding it. We actually had the construction committee go out and take a look at some projects that were completed by the company that's gonna be doing the asphalt work, and everybody was comfortable with that bid. It did come in under engineer's estimate.
so you guys, construction committee, you are satisfied?
There's room for improvement, but given the serious discrepancy in cost. I mean, the folks at Hampshire Drive. Don't want to spend more. Right, and I think that we just. We have our concerns, with both the companies. On some different projects, but I think we're okay with that.
Any
Yeah,
comment?
we discussed it with the
Yeah.
township supervisor.
Yeah. The supervisor.
And it looks like that because the bid came at well under what was provided to the township, this is no longer contingent upon township board approval. Am I understanding that correctly?
You already have it approved this
It's,
level.
it has been approved at the higher level, so
That's right, yeah, okay. So we don't need another approval.
I would make the motion to
I
accept
don't believe so.
the bid from J&N Construction LLC for $328,597.44.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Right, motion by Commissioner Gilman, support by Commissioner Underwood to approve awarding J&N Construction LLC the Hampshire Drive SAD contract in the amount of $328,597.44. Any further discussion?
Township indicated they would like to possibly bond this
Yeah.
project, so they were talking to the bond council, so we haven't been notified yet if that'll run through us or not, but if they do wish to do it, we'll probably need a resolution at the next meeting to go to the county board to issue Act 51 bonds. Should they choose to go through us.
And it's just a pass, it will just be a fiduciary for it, so.
Any further discussion before we vote?
So we've never used this company before. Is this a new construction company or?
I think they have looked at projects for us in the
They have?
past. It's been
Okay.
a little while.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is I'm not familiar with it, but it's a known name at least.
Okay, roll call please.
Corn,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes. Motion passes. Next item is the Clark Road Construction Project. Dan, that's you again.
So this Clark Road project's gonna be nice. It's gonna finish off that second half of Boyce Road that we did previously, an overlay. It did come in over engineer's estimate, but originally what we set aside, budgetary, it is still underneath that, what we set aside for the budget. We have already talked with, we had one bidder for it, Elmer's. We've had discussions with them. They've already identified ways to save money. We did wanna approve it for what the bid came in through, but let the board know to expect that it'll most likely come in under that number when we have the final.
What was the budgeted amount?
1 million.
So they've been instructed to advise us where they can save additional as they proceed.
They came in with some suggestions straight out of the gate.
I was going to, won't know for sure, because I do think our engineers' estimates have gotten a lot better.
I think they're real world, and I think this is not the most important project on our list. And it's substantially over, and at some time, I think we have to start saying
It's 20% over.
it's 20.
That's something to consider.
I think we have to start saying no. However, with, you know, with the understanding that it is substantially over the estimate, and
What happens if we don't right now? I mean, how bad is that particular section stretch? What risks do we take by putting it out?
Yeah, I mean, that road is not in a horrible condition right now, so we're trying to do the overlay to save it to get that point. If we wanted to wait and put it again out in the spring and see if it came in better, we could do that. I don't think it would really be a huge issue with the road. But we always risk the, you know, the factor of, seems like every year the prices go up, so we might put it off a year.
And
right
things
back at the
explode.
same-
As we found out.
Well, yeah, there's no guarantee that. the
Joe
price-
Joe might be able to speak to the road a little more, he thinks.
Yeah. You know, when they get down there and like the ratings and the cracks start to appear. If you can get those top down cracks and seal them up, you can kind of keep the water intrusion from going all the way through and like ruining your base. So
What kind of phaser do we have in this right now?
just, but I didn't. pull
Or
it up
percentage or
specifically.
whatever we want to
You,
call it?
did you drive it? Yeah, it was 2018 was the last time it was phaser rated. So
what about the company that just did all our roads last summer? Can I get rid of-
The PCI data,
Yeah,
yeah,
can we have a rate?
it was identified probably for this type of fix.
Is this something that, let's say we have at least minimal success on town line? Is this something that we could utilize that particular?
no, I think that's way too heavily traveled with the
Okay.
road.
All right.
Yeah, and the condition of this stretch of road is better than town line. So it makes more sense to do an actual overlay on it because you can control thickness. Whereas when it's all variable, you don't know what you're getting
How much of
into.
an overlay are we putting on this?
Internet. Tripping overlay.
And what's our traffic count on that? I know that that road is extremely busy twice a day.
Yeah, which section are we talking about?
That'd be from 113 up to the section where we stop, which is kind of like big.
Which is that called with the current?
So it's this corner up to 113.
That section. Man, I didn't think it was that bad.
We just overlaid it a few years ago too.
Okay, yeah.
That was an
Drive
ultra
it.
thin,
That was what?
an ultra thin, I believe, was that.
Well, we did just overlay that.
This is the part we did.
Yeah, this is the part, so because we took voice, we took it out, and then this part wasn't. We did, this was actually left
The
out.
second half of the project.
Yeah.
And it's gonna cost $2 million, Fairway, $1 million to.
7.
Hang on a second.
It's wide.
Yeah, 260.
There's putting shoulders.
This
on
is
it.
putting shoulders on.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
okay, sorry. $1 million.
Okay, I just wanted to have.
Okay, sure.
I understand. I would like to see you save money on this.
It needs to, it kind of needs to be done.
So I would entertain a motion first.
I'll make the motion.
And then support, and then we can have further deliberation. Okay, so there's a motion by Commissioner Corn, support by Commissioner Underwood to approve awarding Elmer's Crane and Dozer the contract for Clark Road HMA shoulders and overlay project in the amount of $972,163.40. All right, and now we can have any additional discussion.
I second the motion because I know that that is the way around Kingsley and it is heavily used for incoming and outgoing traffic.
Oh, absolutely.
For work, so.
Yeah.
Anything to improve their commute in is a positive thing. I don't know what the traffic counts are through there, but I know they're extremely high twice a day.
Pretty hard.
Yeah.
We should know here in a month or two.
Oh, yeah.
We don't get PASER ratings for all our roads on an annual basis.
We collect PASER ratings with the state and our planning organization, but the ones that we collect with them every year are the NFC 5 and above. So that does not include our local roads and some of our primary roads that are considered minor collectors.
Okay.
So it's 1972 is the car count? Is that, what's ADT?
That would be
Isn't that the average daily,
Daily traffic, yeah.
right?
correct.
Um,
So the average daily traffic is 1972.
That was 1996 though.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, yeah, it's-
Okay, gotcha.
I was gonna say, that's like,
That's
So-
like her,
It's too old to be
yeah,
relevant.
that
Almost 30
particular
years old.
Is
stretch.
that the last time we had a car count on that road?
Anybody going
Oh,
going
wow.
south goes through that section. As
yeah.
it's very visible. This is actually from a PR standpoint, if we want to put it that way, this would be a good section to replace. right now.
It's like semi.
Especially when people, they drive past Voice Road, and they go, why did it turn there?
And we will have severe problems if something does happen.
Right,
Well, and the
right.
shoulders would be really nice.
Yeah, the shoulders are gonna help. and that's-
would
We're
be
working
really-
towards that, so.
Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, roll call, please.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Corn,
Yes.
Chasm.
Yes, motion passes. Next item is Potter Road Award.
So I think we're all very familiar with Potter Road.
Yeah,
We were very happy with what it came in at, was under what we originally estimated. We were coming up with thinking like $300,000. So when we saw it come in for just a little over 220,000, we're very happy. That's gonna be a good fix out there. So, Elmer's bid on it and J&M bid on that. So we did, they kind of Hampshire, they flop back and forth and pricing. So it was nice to see.
You want a motion?
Motion to approve,
Yeah,
Potter Road.
I'll support it.
right. Motion by Commissioner Lehman, supported by Commissioner Thorne to approve awarding Elmer's Crane and Dozer Inc. the contract for Potter Road Crush and Shape Project for a price of $220,260.72. Any further discussion? before we
Just a question of when will they start on this so that all the Facebook people who ask this question every day.
Every day.
Their goal
Every
is
day.
the second week of July.
Week of July.
Let's start getting something out about that now. Let me also add that to my list.
Any further discussions? All right, roll call, please.
Underwood,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Corn,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Chasm.
Yes, motion passes. We move on to purchase of a rock hub trailer. That is, again, it's all Dan, so you might.
So this is something that staff has requested since I've been here. It's been a long time, but we need a rock tub, I never felt previous that we were doing enough work to justify the rock tub. In the last 2 years, we really started doing more work. We're hauling rock, we're hauling stones, and we don't have the ability to do it in-house. All we have is an aluminum gravel trailer. So I think it's probably a pretty good purchase, because in order to do the type of work that we're doing, we need something like this. We were able to rent one a little bit, but we started running into problems that at the same time that we're renting them, the surrounding ones, they're trying to do it too. So we can have it for 2 days. So we gotta stop our project, they take it, then we come back again and do it. So we didn't originally budget for a rock tub, we budgeted for another mower tractor. We went and looked at mower tractor prices and they were through the roof. It was crazy. I think we were at like $140,000 for a tractor. We decided that it made sense just to rent an additional tractor for the mowing season and wait a little bit. And one of the reasons why is an article just came out in the CRA. Before it was always New Holland and John Deere tractors. And Wexford actually purchased one, Misaki purchased one, said another option of a tractor. And we're gonna wait and see how those get, and they actually came in way under what we're looking at for budget. So
Best cure for high prices is high prices. I mean, competition brings in, or high prices brings in competition.
So we'd like to hold off on purchasing the tractor this year, do the rock tub, and then get some feedback from Misaki and Wexford after mowing this year. And take a look at.
You like the east, so motion to approve the east trailer for 91250.
All right, we have a motion of Commissioner Lehman, supported by Commissioner Gilman, to approve the purchase of a rock trailer from M&K in the amount of $91,254. Any further discussion, questions before we vote? All right, roll call, please.
Gilman,
Yes.
Horn,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Hedley.
Yes, motion passes. Next item, high ridge removal ditching.
All right, this is the one we've been trying to get to here, and I've talked about it a few times. We're very excited about this, to try to extend our high ridging season. And this was originally found off a video by the shop, and we actually have it. If you wanted to play it real quick, Scott, I can kind of show you better than what I can play, explain. Yeah.
Where would I find that?
Oh, that was the one that I sent to you.
Circle back on that. A minute.
Okay. So the reason we can't purchase one is we cannot find one. There's not a manufacturer or a dealer in the United States. The only place we can find them is overseas. We actually did try to contact them. They can't sell one to us. So we're actually gonna grab and build one.
Wait a minute, we could have sent a lease over there to buy one.
There you go.
Yeah, you're right.
So
She's gonna be there anyway.
I mean,
I
I don't think she's been to Sweden, so.
Covering my flight.
Let's just send her to all these things too.
I want to see get in the airplane.
Yeah. Alicia stopped at the airport for bringing in some sort of. They let Chuck go, you know.
Now, wait a minute, we have to pay for Chuck too, then we just.
No.
Oh, here we go.
this is it. This is it here.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
oh, look at that.
So you can see all the vegetation, the heavy.
Yeah.
Cleaned it right off. That
Wow.
is so slick.
What happens with the way we do now, we can do a lot of miles a little quicker,
Yeah.
but when we start getting this vegetation, our belt system
Yeah.
plugs up and it stops us, so we're only able to do this for a few weeks out of the year.
So Ace is gonna do all the hydraulics and everything on these and
We're gonna do final fab with the hydraulic cylinders, but they're gonna have. the
That is
complete bucket built and put-
Where do you dump it into?
So then you run this and with, you could run with that rock.
That's what I was wondering. It seemed like it would be the perfect piece of
He gets
equipment.
it filled up, he fills it up and we just keep moving. So
yeah, so.
we're really
Nice.
excited
All right.
that we could keep this, cause I know you guys all heard me talk about the high ridge and how. I
Yeah.
Get get that water off
Well,
the
the
road.
plants are in the way.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
To purchase the ditch bucket fabricated by Ace Welding, with an additional cost for a total of $22,859.10.
Support.
Okay, the motion by Commissioner Underwood, support by Commissioner Corn. To purchase a high ridge removal ditching bucket from Ace Welding. For a total amount of $22,859.10. Any further discussion or any questions? All right, roll call please.
Horn,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Hedley.
Yes. Motion passes.
But I think once we get this out and working, you're gonna see surrounding. Communities come, our road commissioners come check this out. We might start a trend up here.
So you might wanna, trade patent it.
Or license it. at least.
Well, you have to get a patent first, you know, and so that it doesn't get stolen and someone makes millions out of it. And those, I'm serious, if there's no other
You are
design
getting
about it.
free legal
Yeah,
advice.
I think you should seriously consider getting a patent on it. All right, the next item is the automated flagger assistance device.
So the automated flaggers, we budgeted this and we purchased them last year. We're really happy with what we're seeing there. There was just an article that got released from the CRA the other day too, that was talking about the automatic flaggers and said automatic flaggers here to stay. They're really becoming more popular. We were starting to see in the beginning, there were some issues, people didn't quite understand what they were, what's going on, but the fact that we can get our flagger out of the road. I think I talked about it at the last board meeting that I went to, the managers conference where they talked about a lot of fatalities and differently. Like flagging is one of the most dangerous things we can do. And then the other nice thing about this is that one flagger can control both sides. Before you have to have two guys that each side of the paddle, he can control it with remotes on both sides. So you're actually bringing another person back into your staff. So this would just be another tool for our arsenal. So currently we have the lights, we have the trailer mounted ones, and these ones actually go into the restitch of a truck. So our guys should have options. We usually have 4 crews going out. We'll have 4 pieces of equipment. So every crew should be able to have something that they can take with them.
I'll make a motion to purchase automatic flagger assistant device in the amount of $21,875 from give him a break. Give him a break.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a follow-up question.
All right, let's first get the motion on the floor. Motion by Commissioner Underwood, supported by Commissioner Lehman to accept to purchase a automatic flagger assistance device. We'll give them a break at the price of $21,875. Okay, now.
Are we allowed to camera this? Because you're allowed, it's now legal to camera and ticket people who are not following.
I would think so.
I know.
I would definitely want to check with legal before we did
Okay.
it, but I don't see a reason why
Okay.
not.
Or at least camera it. Necessarily, we don't have the automatic ticket. But it would be nice to.
Is it just if somebody damages it, you mean?
In construction zones, they've passed a law. I would not be correct, that you can now ticket via camera for people that are breaking the law in a construction zone.
Gotcha, okay.
But who does it? But we wouldn't have the authority to get it.
I think it goes through state.
Right, so I think.
And then
yeah,
who is the witness?
The
The
camera.
camera.
No, you can't do that because you have the right to face your accuser. You know what I mean? You
The
know,
robots are taking over.
I guess the point is, and AI has already shown that you can fabricate things. I don't have any confidence in it, and I dislike the idea that
I'm not asking,
cameras.
I'm not asking to do it. I was just
Yeah.
asking, is it possible sometime maybe?
Sometimes you just have to kind of bring up the problems beforehand before we get too deep into the discussion of it.
If we have problems with stuff like this, I would certainly support us hiring the sheriff's department for off-duty officers.
Yeah.
To go with the crew, spend some time ticketing motorists. If there are certain operations that we can't seem to do, we just for safety of our employees.
Yeah.
We should consider once in a while having, when we were doing some road work in Pensy County, they couldn't get people to slow down. The road commission just talked to the sheriff, and one day a week we had somebody, and one day a week we had a car that the technician moved with us.
Yeah, I think the MDOT project that's happening on M22. When we had a meeting on that, that's what they talked about. It's like there were all these people driving really fast, like 50, 55 mile, and they put a state trooper there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people stopped doing that. So, and it only took that route. And again, I think we can always revisit this issue if there are problems with people violating or ignoring that, but I don't think we need to get bogged down in that discussion at this point. So we have a motion, we have a support. Is there any other discussion or questions? All right, roll call, please.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Corn.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes, motion passes.
We're buying one and we only own one. Is that?
Next item is the West Front Street Road repair. I think this is the one that Dan reported at the last meeting where they were doing some work, putting up that billboard right by the concrete center, and they did some damage while digging or something, and so.
We're creating created a void in the road collapse right there.
Are we recovering this from anybody?
We are submitting, we're billing the company that was
Okay.
doing that.
So my thought is that if for some reason they don't pay, because apparently there's some dispute amongst them as to whose responsibility it is to pay. If they don't end up paying or reimbursing us, then I think we should seriously consider pursuing legal action to recover that.
Yeah.
Because we can't just let 20,000 here, 20,000 there just go you know.
And you can't leave it
people
as,
think-
you
yeah.
can't leave it as a, you know, it's like, you let this go,
Right,
somebody else is gonna expect it, and I'm gonna talk about something in a little later in comments.
yeah,
Not like uninsured motor.
So I make the motion that we approve the, amount of $20,545 for the Elmer's crane and dozer,
I'll
for the
second
West
that.
Front Street repair.
okay, so there's a motion by Commissioner Gilman, supported by Commissioner Underwood to approve Elmer's crane and dozer for the West Front Street Emergency Road Repair Project in the amount of $20,545. Any further discussion?
It's fair for anybody watching. This work's already been done. You had to do it, right? So we're just making
It's
sure.
all
everyone's
an
getting paid.
emergency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I have a comment about
Sure.
this. Has anybody seen this particular sign in question?
Yeah.
Okay,
I drive by every morning or.
So do I.
Yeah, it's a huge electronic sign.
so brought it up to Dan the other night because I'm confused. I don't know the answer. I'm just throwing it out there. I haven't taken a measuring tape, but this sign is mounted. Instead of a normal billboard like this, it's mounted like this. And it hangs extremely close to the road. Is it in the road commission right of way? And if it is, does the road commission right of way matter in airspace, or is it just about the ground?
That's an
I
interesting.
mean, it is really close to the road. It's very bright. When you come around the corner at night, it sort of startles you. And
It's in the road commission right away in terms of how far out, but whether or not that,
I think it's been a long time, I think under statutes, you have like about. I think I want to say it used to be about 100 or 200 feet above which is still considered your area above your home or whatever it's, for example, for easement purposes. That is still considered that, so I would imagine that if it's that close, it would be considered.
so to that question, did they permit for us to do work in our right of way?
They did not blow a
Well,
permit.
we don't know, I mean, we have to. see.
because the post that holds it appears, I'm just naked eye, out of our right of way. But unlike every other
Comes over
billboard
that
I've
far?
seen,
Yeah, I didn't realize it came over that far.
I
yeah,
guess we might have to survey the right way.
Yeah, we went.
I think that'd be appropriate.
and I'm concerned about, first of all, damage that could be done to the sign and are we liable for that if we throw a rock or whatever? But it is dangerous when you come around the corner. It's right on the curb and it is right there. It's what you see. You look as if you're driving towards it
Sure.
until you turn. It's
That's
very
their
bright.
intent, so I mean,
Yeah,
If it's annoying in our right of way, it needs to go.
It's very bright and I think in a snowstorm, it could be a problem.
I think the brightness I think that might be an issue, is that.
It's extremely
at-
bright.
At dark, it's really bright.
It's really bright.
Is it on the concrete surface?
Yeah.
side?
Yeah,
Curve,
yeah,
curve.
it's on their side.
It's right before the eye doctor.
It's between the concrete service and Kids Creek, the eye hospital there.
Just take a look at it, because something about it isn't right, but I wondered if airspace was involved in road commission.
Yeah,
regulator.
it could be for easement purposes, but we have to, I think.
Yeah.
It's very out of place. I will say that.
Any other questions, discussion?
So we basically just asked Dan to survey that and ask the lawyers that has. Correct.
Well, that's not the motion.
I mean, no, we're.
Right, we are directing, we have asked Dan to look into that.
I wanted to bring it up under the guise of this discussion.
Yeah,
because
sure. Yeah,
Maybe they won't pay. I don't
Right.
know, so I'm just bringing it up.
okay, roll call, please.
Underwood,
Yes.
Gilman,
yes.
Corn,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes, motion passes. The next item is the CAD excavator repair.
Sure, so this will be covered under our insurance, but still the dollar amount have to get covered here up front. Unfortunately, I had an accident where a tree came down on our excavator. We got it over to Michigan Cat, and this is the dollar amount that came back up for after for repairs, so.
Okay,
Wow.
do I have a motion?
Sure. Motion to approve the repair of the excavator and the use of the rental.
Your support?
Support.
Right, a motion by Commissioner Lehman, support by Commissioner Underwood to approve the repair of the excavator in the amount of $32,292.47 and the use of a rental for $6,379. Any further discussion or questions?
Is this after the fact too? We already rented the excavator and have been using it.
You know, we have a, probably get an excavator next week.
we have talked about a little bit that the manager's spending was a little too low, and we were gonna talk about, somebody in the policy committee or someone was gonna talk about that.
We actually did talk about it not that long ago at our, agenda review meetings about revisiting the purchase policy. And I think there was some discussion that some of the rules are changing. Statute is
There's a House
yeah,
bill
yeah.
currently increasing the bidding limits, so that would be a good time to line everything out.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we want to get in the way of the staff doing the work. That if we weren't meeting now, it's gonna be another 2 weeks and summer.
The 6,000 falls within your.
Yeah, 6,000.
He's doing this as a courtesy, I think.
You would have
Let us know
rented,
that-
just gone ahead and rented
Right.
that. We wouldn't
Yeah.
go.
I just wanted to give a full picture of what it.
No, that's
was
good,
happening.
and I appreciate that.
Yeah, he could have rented because that's within the state. Any other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Gilman,
Yes.
Horn,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Underwood.
Yeah.
Hammond.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, next item is what we have been talking about for a few weeks, the local road system. This is just like a tentative program, so to speak, where we'll start off with our engineer Joe, who generally talk about the asset management plan, specifically, I asked Joe to, talk about the requirements or the regulations that say that require us to maintain 75 to 80% of our primary roads in fair or good condition. And then also just talk about generally how the asset management plan would work. And then we'll go to Phil to talk about financing and funding. I think he has some information about that as to how MTF funds are being spent on local versus primary roads. Same with millage funds for local roads and some funding options that may be available or that we could consider. And then we'll all move on to Dan and we'll talk in more detail about the 5-year plan. We recently approved a company to prepare that 5-year plan. And then lastly, we'll talk about a local road match program, which is the township. So that's the general idea. And obviously the commissioners will have questions in between the presentation. So, all right, Joe, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, so as for the asset management plan, there's anybody who's got over, I think, 100 miles of roads in their network and the County Road Commission, they have to submit an asset management plan to the state on a certain schedule. The submittal for Grand Traverse County Road Commission was 2022. And then it gets updated periodically, like every 5 years. This picture is just the basic picture of what asset management looks like. As far as ratings of roads go, the dark black line is what is a typical degradation curve of an asphalt pavement. So starts out good. Unfortunately, you only get 1 year out of 10 when you reconstruct something completely, and then it rides at a 9. And these are just general numbers for years. It's not set in stone. Every road's a little different. But the idea is, as you get close to that 7 rating or earlier, you do some preventative maintenance, say a chip seal. Early on that $2,000 mark, that's up on the far left in the green. That would be a crack fill operation. Or other like lesser preventative maintenance items. Slurry seals or things like that that don't add any structure to a road. And then preventative maintenance, say you get down to that 7 mark, you do a chip seal. The amount of time it takes for it to get back to a 7, that's your extended service life for doing that fix. And then degradation curve continues. So then you get down to say a 5, that would be the Clark Road kind of situation. You do a structural overlay of some sort. And see, as you do more and more fixes, the cost goes up, but you keep extending the life of that road. Versus the black line, if you wait until you're in that 3, 4 or that reconstruction phase down on the 20-year mark, that's where you're into that $1 million a mile kind of fix, the crushing shapes. So the general idea is you keep your good roads good. And you can pick off the bad roads and then you keep those roads good. So that's the principle right there behind asset management. Is, you know, extending the life of your roads for the cheapest amount possible.
So this assumes, Joe, that obviously you follow this management plan the way it's set up. But what about in a scenario where the asset management plan, let's just say, has been ignored or not followed in the same way, and so certain roads that should have been improved or maintained were allowed to degrade? What are the options available at that point to bring those roads up to a serviceable level?
Depending on where they're at, you know, there's a myriad of fixes. And I think in like the road commission, there's generally 11 different types of fixes they do. Crack seal, chip and overlays, mill and fills, different layers or thicknesses of asphalt, 1.5 inches, 2 inches, things like that. And then you get into your crush and shape, and then there's full reconstruction. Generally around here, crush and shapes work really well. There's sandy soils, and you just use that asphalt to blend it into the aggregate and make new aggregate. And then you pave on top of it. The full reconstructs are where you don't have enough structural thickness with what's there existing to support the road. So if you've got 4 inches of 4 inches of gravel and 2 inches of HMA, and your road needs 8 inches of aggregated gravel to support it, then you can add some, or it's got poor soils underneath and poor drainage that are contributing to its failing. That's where you get into that reconstruct. But as far as like letting roads fall off, what you would see is you didn't do the first preventative maintenance for $50,000 a mile. You let it go down to that, you know, 5 or something like that, and maybe you do a structural overlay for 200,000. But you can see where you're spending that $200,000 is much earlier in the life of the road. Or it continues on down and you just crush and shape it or reconstruct it in 20 years. But as far as like options to get back on track, when you've done a project and brought a road back up to a good condition, you prioritize preventative maintenance for those roads, kind of at the expense of those roads that were forgotten, knowing that someday you're going to get to them.
This is why that preservation is really important.
Yeah.
We get it early, it's cheap, and we can do a lot more roads. And yes, some of them do fall off. It just happens. And then eventually you either get to it, you could maybe find somebody, you know, give us a grant or something, or make up a fake tribal route or something, you know. I mean, give it some kind of status so that we can get money for the transport or something. But
yeah, and an analogy that I've used before is it's you have 2 hen houses, and one's good, one's bad, and the good one needs a roof. You're not going to fix the bad one and let the roof destroy the good one.
Right.
Same as your house. So that's asset management principles in a nutshell. And then as far as the asset management plan that the road commission has, there's different rules for how they wanted it reported and different things that they wanted to see. And that's kind of, it's just stuff in the background, like reporting for them. But the basics of it are, you have to kind of pick your level of service and what you're comfortable with for the condition of your roads and how you're going to prioritize it. So there's different ways to prioritize. There's criticality, adjacency to hospitals, schools, major businesses, high truck routes, and not all just traffic, like car volume, but you want to look at things that like drive the economy around here and put some emphasis on those. And then there's just the number of people using them, but also what kind of class road it is, but it's rated in the network. So that makes a difference in the priority. Asset management in and of itself doesn't really care if it's a subdivision road or a primary road or a state highway. In a perfect world, it would look at it like it's all a big asset and it all costs money. And you're going to try to maintain a it. But here in the state of Michigan, we have Act 51 that dictates where you can spend money in MTF funds. So it gets divide it out into different projects and meet different funding sources. And some roads you can utilize federal aid funds on and others you can't.
So just looking at this chart and thinking, as you know, my mind is on Town Line Road quite a bit. What we're doing with Town Line Road is kind of down in the red here, and we're gonna put it up to maybe almost to the green, and it's gonna have a real sharp curve coming down.
That's
Yeah.
precisely.
Yeah, but it'll be up there for a little bit. Cheap.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's the hope that it, maybe that curve stretches out a little, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, the biggest one with that road is, if it was a super low volume road and didn't have as much traffic going to the airport, things like that, or the sub base underneath it was in better condition, you might see it last a little bit longer, but you know the structure's not there for the volume that's there. So the fix you're gonna do is gonna suffer from structural. And that's where that critical failure point at a 4 is. That's where you start to see a lot of traverse cracking, or you see cracking that runs down the wheel path of a road. So that where the tire tracks are. Perfect example is Hammond Road beyond where the two fixes were, like the wheel paths are all cracked up. That's a structural failure. There's something wrong with the structure of that road that needs to be addressed.
Mhm.
So if you were just to put a 1-inch or 2-inch overlay on that road,
It'd break
it's
up
gonna
pretty.
come right through. Because it's not enough to
You
support
gotta
it.
drive off.
I know, I was looking at that today going, is there something we can do with this like
Yeah,
that? But
I just drive off the side of the road on Hammond.
so do I,
because,
yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot easier.
Yeah.
But I was
It-
wondering, what happened to this road? Now
It
I know.
has the original road. I don't know if you look at it. It follows the original road. Where the original road used to run, and that creates all potholed and cracked up right
Yeah.
along that original road.
Right on.
Yeah,
the road.
and
It's right on the old road bed.
a great example of that would be South Airport before it was reconstructed.
Yeah,
That concrete road that was underneath, it was very close to the surface. And you could see where the old concrete road was. And it cracked that road because of stresses of either
The
temperature,
pressure, yeah.
yep, or
Yeah.
loading from the traffic that's on that road.
Can you talk a little bit about, you started talking about some of the requirements. I want to just address this requirement of keeping about 75 to 80% of our primary roads in fair or good condition, and what that means, what is fair, what is good.
Yeah, so the term or the number that's been used a lot is 80%, but I looked into it, and the County Road Association, along with MDOT, when a lot of transportation funds were coming available, they made a goal to have primary roads or federal aid type roads in a condition of, it's actually 90%.
Oh.
90% good or fair. So that's from a 5 up to a 10. It doesn't all have to be 10s, but it's a goal, and it's something, I think it had more to do with expressing to the state the need in the state for fixing roads. So if you want half your roads in good and fair condition and the rest in the poor condition, then the amount of money you need is less. But what you don't see is on Hazer rating, or can't remember what it equates to in PCI, but roads that are 5, you don't get calls. 4s, rarely a call, starting to get a few, like that's where people think that you need to fix something. But you rarely get calls for poor road conditions on those. It's the 3s and the 2s that really come in that they drive phone calls. So that was one of the reasons behind it. That's what got put into asset management guidelines for future planning to show the funding gap needed to get there. So that's where level of service for what the road commission is comfortable with is one thing. And it's not a requirement that you get there in a certain amount of time. It was show us how much money it's going to take to get there in 10 years, something along those lines. But if you're working towards your goal and you can show progress towards it, there's no real ramifications. But with the Transportation Asset Management Council, if you submit like an asset management plan and then just don't do anything on it, they can start to dictate. It's in the law that they can start to dictate where you're going to spend money on the roads.
So in other words, our decision on what percentage of our primary roads we want to keep in that fair to good condition could have an impact on how much money we end up getting.
No, if you want to have an impact on how much money you get, it would impact how we get to spend it.
Okay,
Or they might withhold it to leverage some authority and make it happen. If that makes sense, like dictate, you gotta spend it here, but we're not gonna give it to you to show us you're gonna do that. But they also did pass a law with it that agencies that have, are showing progress on their asset management plan and can justify it, they can move some primary road money into local road funds. But it's kind of a teeth top. You know, if you take it from one group and put it to another, you're affecting the other one. So if you're up to date and doing well on your asset management plan, there's minor options like that, but I think you have to show that you're doing it. I never looked into that too hard. I just know it happened.
questions?
Mr. Chairman, how do we sit? Are we looking good with the asset management folks? Are we?
So far, good. Hot off the asphalt from Chris driving around last week. Right now, good and fair. Good and fair is about 79%.
Yeah.
And four is almost. Yeah, you can split those evenly. So it's been riding at around 80% for the primary roads since 2020, I think, or 2021. So it goes up a little bit, down a little bit, up a little bit, depending on the projects. It doesn't always encompass every single primary road for this that we rate. So like Chris was saying, rating the primary roads, those roads that haven't been rated since 2018. The road commission used to go out and rate all their local roads on a schedule. And the MPO funds, you can get reimbursed for rating your local roads. I think it's every 2 years you can get funding to rate them. But what they rate with the MPO is the county primary roads that can get federal funding. So we do have some primary roads that can't get federal funding. And those don't get rated with that group every year. So with the Transmap data that was done the other year, there's a good look at what the road condition is. We know what it is. Correlation to Pacer isn't precise, but it gets really close. So if, you know, something's rated really poor in PCI data, it's really poor in Pacer.
Right.
That's pretty well, like, that's not an issue. But keeping up to date on how your network is performing does help with the asset management plan.
These miles aren't subdivision roads and things like
Nope,
that.
those are all
right?
filtered out.
Yep.
So it's just the primary road network.
And
And
that's with Better Village.
yes,
Yeah, if our ratings decline further without using the millage money on the primaries, our justification would be you're not sending us enough money.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right,
You could still say we're doing all we can
yeah,
with the money.
yeah.
There's
Right.
not enough money.
This is the goal, but we need more money.
The reality is, we're doing this project on 3 Mile, we're covering it, trying to, put a bandage on Town Line. There are a couple of other roads. It's a mile at a time. We've got 1,100 miles and how many of them are primary, 600 or so miles of primary roads?
the 230.
200?
No.
Okay, it's one at a time. So it's like, it's keeping up at really an expensive rate. I mean, it's no small feat. This is why the preservation is so important.
Kind of like painting the Mackinac
Yeah,
Bridge.
they're like, why are you doing this to this road? It was
just
fine.
done.
It was just done.
Yeah.
It's like, because we don't want to rebuild it in 5 years.
We talked about that in the communications committee,
Yeah.
that there seems to be a real disconnect with people understanding that. And I know certain people
That's-
don't want to hear things,
Yeah.
right? But for those that do, I think it would be really valuable to
That's a good
understand.
one right there.
So that was one of the ones we talked about, was a real consistent thing. If you just chip and sealed this road 2 years ago, why don't you go do Frankie? Well, we want to do Frankie. But that is gonna require a lot more and we need to focus on that. But while we can, let's make sure your road doesn't look like Frankie Road in 10 years or whatever, and we need to do that. So that was a real like topic of discussion for communications was talking about, and we don't want to talk in words like asset management plan, right? We want to talk in real world, talk about what we're doing. I know in engineering world, that's totally normal language, like at dinner and stuff, but for the rest of us, we just want to understand why we see, you know, one road getting done a couple of years apart and nobody's touched my road. It's, you know,
Mhm.
so that's a really important tool. So this is good data for me to understand, to help maybe try to translate it out into communicating with people better.
Mhm.
All of us talking to the townships that we talk to or making reports, but also just understanding it and getting a big message out on that.
Any other questions for Joe? All right, well, Joe, thank you.
If anything comes up, just ask.
Yeah,
Thanks, Joe.
thanks. Turn it over to Phil. I want to talk about money. Doesn't think we need to do anything with roads.
So I pulled together some information, some historical information that kind of mostly focused on kind of local roads and how we're using MTF monies that we get from the state and where we're spending them. The first sheet is just a high level, by year for the last 5 years of the revenue received for both the primary and local road network. And I highlighted routine maintenance because we typically don't require much township participation on routine maintenance activities. We do for brine. So I did on the local roads net that amount of the reimbursements the township provided for their cost sharing on that. And you can see like after about 70% of our revenue on the MTF is dedicated towards the primary road network, and about 30% is on the local road network. So we have surplus funds in the primary that we can use to, you know, fund over to the local. We use for capital outlay purchases, administration, things of that nature. The local road network, we're pretty much spending all the money we receive on just routine maintenance items. There's another schedule that behind it that'll detail where we're spending it. But before I get there, I just wanted to provide some context on the local road fund. I went back 20 years of Act 51 reports and just highlighted sources of all revenue for the local road networks and the expenditures. So this is going to include routine maintenance projects, SADs, and then the associated revenue. You can see that we generally are transferring money out of the primary roads to subsidize the local road system.
Is there a cap on what you can transfer per?
You can transfer up to 30% per year. Unless there's an emergency, I think there's an additional 20% then that they would allow. And all counties, you know, transfer, you know, some. But obviously if you're taking 30% out of your primary roads every year, your primary roads are gonna deteriorate much with this. The next page is just the 5 years of routine maintenance. Where are we spending money? Potholes and mowing and trees are a fairly big one. Shoulder maintenance. That's putting gravel down. Winter maintenance is about 22 to 25% of our local road budget. Grinding is a pretty big one, but we usually get a reimbursement from the townships on that. So, and at the bottom, I calculated a cost per mile. So we have 763 miles. Obviously, we're not doing, you know, we do have seasonal roads that we get the same funding per mile for, but we're not spending this. We're kind of using those funds and putting them back into kind of the paved roads or gravel roads and the other network. But in 2020, we were right around $5,500 per mile. And last year we did a real heavy emphasis on local roads with ditching and that we were at just under $7,400 per mile. Down below is kind of using the state's average unit values on how we get our funding. So local roads is funded 65% based on mileage and 35% based on population. So they give us, they give the counties at the end of the year an annual report of what the average units are across the state. So I just plugged our allocation factors in. I didn't have 2022. I wasn't here at that time, and I can't go back. The
This is
state.
kind of a secret stash of information here.
I try to collect that information and save it here for future reference. But you can see back in 2020, we were receiving just under 5,300 per mile. 2021 was the last year of the phase in for the 2015 revenue package.
Right.
And after that, it's just been increases in gas, and they kind of this have it indexed a little bit.
Index for inflation
And last year we received just under $6,400 per mile. So we spent a little bit over $1,000 per mile more on routine maintenance.
So did you say the local MTF revenue is based on 65% on mileage? and
Yeah,
what was
so when the
remainder?
formula comes in,
Yeah.
you know, they give a county allocation, and then they take 10% off the top for urban roads.
Okay,
And then the difference will go down to kind of the rural or the county-wide, if you will, and they take 4% for off of that to go to local, and then 75% goes to primary and 25% goes to local. And within the primary, they break it down. Each county gets an allocation. You know, it's just for being a county, then your primary roads, and then vehicle registration fees. So we get like 40 some cents back per dollar registered in our county. On the local roads, it's all based on miles and population.
so all right, we're getting, I'm gonna use 2024, $6,378 a mile. We're spending, like you say, about $1,000 more. So
Yeah.
we're taking, essentially what we're doing is we're taking $800,000 to $900,000 out of the primary.
Yeah, we had a little fund balance built up, so we didn't have to transfer quite as much, but
Okay,
um,
it's coming from somewhere.
right, yeah.
Okay.
The next page is just from our Act 51 report, basically showing by township what we received for that township based on their allocation factors of miles and population. I don't like how they have this laid out. I mean, they have local roads first and then primary, and then the population is actually local roads. For me, I moved the primary first and then combined the locals, but you can kind of see what we're receiving. And we're doing a little better than the others because we get urban funds that our neighboring counties don't. And we have a higher population, so we get extra money per mile because we have a higher density of population.
How much more do we get for being urban? Roughly, I mean,
So,
as calculations.
on the local road network, it was like about $500,000 per year. And on the primary, actually, I would have to, it is 1.2 million.
Okay,
Now, once our urbanized limits, because we just updated that, we'll see an increase in that, once they certify the new urban boundary.
so the trade-off for having to have extra engineers to figure out drainage and whatnot is still worth it.
We're getting about $2 million.
Yeah.
But you look at the other counties, they don't have traffic signals like we have. I mean, the urban
Right.
funds, we're having to spend a lot more on
Yeah.
that type of infrastructure than what other counties are.
what does miles outside municipalities mean?
So that's outside of the cities.
Cities,
Yeah,
okay.
we get to count the village population. Like, village of Kingsley and Pipe Lake is part of the, but this residents of city of Traverse City we don't get any funding back for that. They get their own MTF allocations.
And then what's the difference between total local and local urban?
So you know how we have adjusted urban limit, that just
The
got expanded out
NPO, yeah.
Green Lake. So the roads within that get extra funding. So there's 10% off the top of MTF that goes into urban roads. So we get an additional $17,675 for a primary road and $2,946 for a local road.
Per mile.
Per mile,
Okay,
on top of the
the
normal.
normal. If they are, okay.
So on this front page, it was the MTF, so that's just the Act $51.
That's all, just Act 51.
Just Act.
Yeah.
Where does the millage play a role?
I'll get there.
Oh, it's not there, okay.
I'm getting there.
And then the other question I had when you talked about the vehicle registration
Yeah.
and that, is that encompassed in the Act 51 kind of?
It is.
Okay, so it's not, okay,
Yeah.
it's not broken out in this.
Current, it's not on this report, so my last report was May through April of 2025. We had $16.1 million of vehicle registrations. And it returns like 44% of that amount. So our primary road's got an additional $7 million so that 7 million of the 9.3 million is from vehicle registrations.
That's what I
That
was
plays a
wondering.
big factor in.
So that's a huge tax on people, obviously, when they pay for their vehicle registration. But when you take it out of our MTF money, we really aren't getting a lot of MTF money up here. Or is it different? I mean, it's based on population, so it doesn't
A lot of
matter,
it's
right?
on population. I
Yeah.
do have a big spreadsheet where I went through and got all the counties' information. That's pretty eye opening, a lot of it's population, so their cost per mile is gonna be way higher
Right.
for revenue because of the population or the registration fees, they're taking a bigger chunk of
Yeah.
that pot. if you will.
So people that register their car in Grand Traverse County,
That funding comes directly.
I'm
back to
curious
us.
about summer people and snowbirds and people,
I did notice that it had dropped a little bit, and I think it was due to the 2-year registration. Some of the people up here must be doing 2
Right.
years.
Yeah,
So we'll see a bump, and then the next year
Right.
it was dropping.
and it's just interesting
It
to
was a
think
little-
about that. So that's a very significant part of the Act $51 that we get. And it has nothing to do with the gas
I
cap.
remember back in the 90s when Maya moved in down in Newport, that they were registering everything in Grand Rapids or Penn County, and they wanted to get some of that because their trucks they had a huge distribution center, so they
Right?
wanted them to register some of those trucks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another
Have
player
some
in
of
it.
of course.
Another concern I have is as electric vehicles or hybrids come in and there's less revenue from the gas tax, that we're just gonna get jacked up on vehicle registrations to compensate for that.
They do pay an additional
Yeah.
registration fee.
Mhm.
The
And
electric
it's-
and
it's-
hybrid.
And the rate is different between an actual plug-in only and a hybrid.
And a hybrid.
There's 2 different rates. And I can tell you that the registration fee actually generates more money than the active.
Isn't that interesting?
So.
Okay, that's good to hear.
So
That's what
far,
I was
yeah.
worried about.
I think you're fine.
Okay,
That's-
because we have to think forward, 10 years, 25 years, and what the sources of the revenue will be for us and how that all works. And yeah, our registrations are very expensive here already in Michigan. So,
I probably should do a little analysis because registrations is a big component. If there's a different percentage of vehicles in a certain area, that's, I have more registrations,
That's
they're
right.
gonna be taking a bigger piece of that.
Well, and you have to wonder, you have to also think about, like, I remember last year, the governor was proposing legislation that would give electric car owners a break on their registration fee. Basically, waive a percent, so that if in the future, if that something like that gets passed, then that would impact our funding.
So presently, an electric vehicle, let's say a Tesla, because those run around 100 grand if you buy the higher end. They pay the flat rate, and then you do pay the MSRP,
yes,
and then you have a 3-year step down, which then allows you to deduct your under federal level.
Okay, oh,
And then,
because of
and then
the
it flattens out,
yeah,
and that rate flattens out for the life of the vehicle.
that's it.
That's it, doesn't go down anymore. So you could buy a 25-year-old
So your
car.
registration is
and
always
still plan
based
that
on,
flat rate.
okay, gotcha, I understand. Yeah,
The next schedule is in the Act 51 report is by township. Basically your heavy maintenance projects. This would not include any chip seals or crack seals that we do track in the construction pages of my financial report. And they do get reported at RT, but they are not encompassed on here. The township contributions, that's any kind of township contribution, whether it's for brining, routine maintenance items, SADs, you know, all of anything is going to be reported there.
You know, look at Grand Township.
I know, I
It's
just
like
like,
punching way above its weight limit, you
yeah,
know.
good for them.
267,
Yeah.
over $267,000 in the,
Aaron?
yeah, I think it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
don't they get ARPA funds?
No, Grant Road, that
Yeah,
was.
they got ARPA funds.
There's Zoo Road.
Zoo Road, sorry.
Zoo
Zoo
Road,
Road.
They got
Yeah,
ARPA funds.
Yeah, Mayfield is.
Yeah.
No, they did a great job on
Yeah.
putting that together, that was.
Not all counties publish. It's pretty interesting if you, the counties that do publish to see, you know, the townships contributions. I know from my experience downstate, I looked it up today, like down in Monroe, they have 15 townships, 4 of them have a township millage. And they've already issued 164 contracts with townships for anything from overband crack fill, chip seals, mowing, ditching, cross tile replacements, all
This is all
paid by
negotiated per township.
all paid by township. They set aside 500,000, allocated it, it's very similar to us. Allegan County sets aside 500,000 for projects. Benzie County sets aside 200,000 for projects.
And Allegan has some township villages too, don't they?
So-
Yeah,
We'll get
Okay,
to that,
all right.
the fun one.
all right.
So these contributions are the cost share and say an SAD
Yes.
or something like
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah. It doesn't, it's not millage, it's money written from a township. Recorded in there if you want to. So the next page is I created this project file so I could kind of track, you know, all the projects we did, the funding sources, the year the funds are expended. A lot of projects, you know, they carry over, so it's a beast. So I try to keep it simple. Have one row per project, and I can I'm reporting this based on the year completed, so this won't tie back to any kind of financial statement. But it's pretty interesting to see both on the primary and local roads, the percentage of projects. So this would be over, you know, anything reported to IRT. You know, crack seals and chip seals and reconstructions, any safety intersection signal improvements, safety projects, all of that's going to be reported in here. And over the last, you know, 10 or 11 years, on average, 37% of the primary roads are funded with MTF. 43% of those projects were millage. We had 12% paid with federal funds, 7% with state funds, and 1% local funds. On the local road network, 25% MTF, 29% millage, and 39% local. I did combine everything overall. So on average, about 35% of the projects are MTF, 40% millage, which is huge. I mean, we actually do more money on projects using millage funds than the balance we have from MTF. 10% federal aid, 7% state, and then 7% local.
So for the local roads, we didn't spend any millage funds in
So,
5 years from
you're
2019.
you're correct. Yes, so I, in that spreadsheet, I track all the millage revenues from the receipts, and then I allocate it to the projects, and then any difference, like I'm covering the overhead and that with MTF funds and things like that. For the actual, what I designated, we had from 2014 to 2024, 45,624,000 in total millage funding, and most of it on the local roads is spent between 2014 and 2018 for a total of just under 5 million. We had about 40 million going to the primary roads. But that also helped us get primary roads into a better condition.
Right.
This year, we did get our deposit on Tuesday from the county. I got a call into the treasurer to see if that's the final distribution. I haven't gotten a final calculation report yet, but we did, receive this year $6,034,000. So I budgeted $5,875,000. So I'm gonna, on the budget amendment, pick up that extra.
Value sir.
And we've already, not including what we're gonna do on Potter and Barney Road, some of the things that will come through on a budget amendment. We already had about $3.5 million of that on local roads. Chip sealing a lot of these roads that you see we did in 2017.
Right.
Where we did overlays or crushing shapes, we're finally getting around to chip sealing them, sealing them up. So this year, I'm expecting, right now, it was like 59% of the funds. It's gonna go higher. Williamsburg isn't gonna happen this year, so we'll take those, that was on primary, so we'll look at either, finding another local project, or we'll carry that over into next year. But
So I guess it's a question for Joe as well. I mean, at some point, if we are at almost 80% of our roads are in fair and good condition, and of course, it took a lot of resources and funding to get to that point. At some point, when do we start seeing the benefit of that, which in my mind would be, we're not spending as much money on those primary roads to get them to that point, so that should enable us to start spending more of the money on the local roads to bring them up to some, like from a 2 to a 5 or something like that.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the number of miles in your network that are in that, and how much money you could spend on the primary roads with those bigger projects. And once you chip seal the road, it takes a few years to get back to doing that. So it's pretty low cost on those. And I think that's where you get into really looking at the necessity of your road network. So there are some primary roads that don't see a lot of traffic, and they're on the map. So if you were to spend, 2-3 million to muck that road out and rebuild it the way it needs to be, is that a good decision compared to a local road that's closer to the urban limits that gets 2,000 cars a day? And that's where sometimes the way that the funding breakdown and what you're allowed to spend on those roads doesn't really work with what is reality.
Example, Zimmerman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
Zimmerman.
yeah, and Zimmerman's a weird one where it's like,
not long.
It's got a lot of traffic. I
but
mean,
it's a local road, but it can get federal funding.
Silver Lake.
because of the traffic counts.
I don't know how it ended up on the NFC map. There's some roads that are like that. You can be a local road that's on the NFC map.
Interesting.
Have we analyzed those roads to find or identify roads that maybe should be recategorized that would open up additional funding, or?
That's kind of the question I'm gonna ask for somebody to answer. How do we identify what's the primary road, let's say local?
So Phil can answer this too, to some extent, but it's kind of a density distribution of primary roads. And it's what connects to it. So if you've got a lot of local roads that tee into a road, and that's the one that takes you into town, obviously the primary one's the one that takes you into town. So you look at it more like a web on how to get places, but there's also a balance that I can't remember exactly what the balance is.
statewide, it's like 1/3 of the
Yeah.
roads are primary and 2/3 are local.
Yeah, so if you get too far outside that 1/3, 2/3 balance, they won't certify a road to be a primary regardless of how many cars are.
And if you don't have urban funds, you actually get a little money for having a local road then as a primary, just the way the formula.
But we do better with primaries here.
But in the urbanized area, we get that extra 17,000.
But what's the process that is used at here to evaluate or reevaluate which roads should stay primary and which roads should not. Is there a process here?
Yeah, we should, like, we've looked at swapping a few in the past and it's not difficult. It's easier to get a road on the NFC map than it is to get, like road swap from primary to local or local to primary. And one of the reasons is that they don't want road commissions swapping primary and local roads just to get funding for projects. Cause you could just redo your Act 51.
Sure, every year, it's like, and then get.
Yeah,
Oh, no, this
all
is
your
not-
primary.
Yeah, right, right. That makes sense.
But there is a mechanism and
Or bypassing that local match,
Correct.
50%
yes,
from other funding sources
Right.
on a local road.
and that's still like when your question of when do you start doing projects on your local roads, you still run into the Act 51 funding where on a local road for a project, that would be chip seals, crack fills, overlays, crush and shapes. 50% of the funds of a project have to come from another source than FPF.
And we can do the CPM without.
Yeah,
other
there's some
sources,
CPM we can do,
So
but
getting into.
And
reconstruction.
I understand that, and I think technically that's what we thought the millage would
that could
come up with that.
Yeah.
But if we are spending 7.4 and 6.7 millions of dollars in millage funds on primary roads and zero on locals, I think at some point there's a legitimate question to be had as to how much money do we keep pumping into primary roads? And even though they are at this level that we want them to be at,
Mhm.
without now looking at some of the local roads and diverting some millage funds to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you could do is, we can project out funding sources. Like, if you set certain funds towards the primary road network, part of the asset management plan in 2022 was what is the dollar amount you can spend and what does the road network look like by spending that money? Not perfect, but what it does is it shows how much money you should be allocating with the condition your road network is in right now. How much money should you be allocating to preventative maintenance, structural fixes, and then reconstructions? And that will kind of run that out for a number of years. Once you get out to past 10 years, it becomes kind of a not. It gives you the same answer for everything. It says to just chip seal the whole road network every year, which isn't realistic. But if you're looking out to that 5-year range, you get a pretty good projection of where you're gonna be. So you could take some funds away from the primary road network that you're typically spending and look to see what happens to your network. And get an idea of if you're comfortable with that. Like I said, it's a level of service and some of it's a policy decision on what you want the roads to look like.
Right, yeah. What a follow-up on that question is that there's obviously good is what, 7 to 10?
Yeah,
And then fair is 5 to 7.
Yes.
Is there a way to estimate how much extra money it costs to make a primary road from fair to good? Or to keep the road at fair?
So
We just have to have them fair.
could you bring back that chart?
It was like 50,000 a mile that.
Yeah.
And then up to 200,000.
So the problem with keeping a road at a fair is it's really hard to maintain a road at 5. Because there's not many fixes that keep it a 5. What would keep it at 5 is if you were doing crack seal, but that only goes for so long. Right? It's like 1 year.
Yeah, right.
So you can't just perpetually crack seal the road, otherwise you end up with a rubber road. So anything that you do, it will up the rating to a good. So it's not, what you would have to do is look at what percentage split do you want the road condition to be in? Knowing that you're going to allow some roads to go from good to fair.
Okay.
And you're gonna take fewer roads going from fair to good. So it's a balance of that. And I can look back at different projects and how the primary road looked and you can see roads that went from good to poor, like some have done that, like between Pacer ratings. And how many have moved from poor to good and how many have gone from good to fair. And you can see that mileage transfer. And the more roads that are going backwards, you're falling behind.
Hmm.
And you can run that out over several years.
So you run the risk, if you let more of your primary roads go from good to fair, do you increase the risk of them falling from fair to poor?
Yes.
Well, the way I look at it, that at year 10, we're spending $50,000 per mile. And it's gonna drop down into fair in 10 years. So that's $5,000 a mile, whereas when we do that $200,000 overlay, that's $20,000 per year per mile.
Yeah, and part of
We're not getting
Yeah, I like the
$20,000 per
7-year
year
plan
per
on those per
mile
year.
of funding on top of
You know?
maintenance.
Yeah, and part of the process of selecting roads at the road commission has been you pick all your fixes, and we've got a fairly good idea of what the extended service life of those fixes is. And I think, you heard Chris talk about this, but you take your whole road network and all the fixes you could do to the roads that are in the network. So we've got a Pacer rating list and a generally good idea of what fix you can apply to those roads. So then you've got a list of the miles of roads that can be a certain fix, or like, so you've got the number of miles that are in chip seal category, number of miles that are in the overlay category, number of miles that are in the crush and chip category. But what you do is you look at that year fix. So for $50,000, you get 10 years. For $1 million, you get 20 years. And you balance out the number of miles you should be doing to get the most value. So every year your road network degrades 1 year. So you lose 1,000 miles of years on your roads every year. The amount of money you're putting towards fixes and getting the network should sum up to more than 1,000 miles if you're going to improve your network, if that makes sense. Like, so that's the miles that you're fixing by the years. Yeah. It's the miles that you're fixing by the years that you expect that fix to take out. So it's a return on investment analysis.
So I have a question all the time. We certify our primary roads yearly.
That 51 map is yearly.
It's a yearly map.
Yep, it's primary and local.
Because I have some townships asking me to switch roads. And when does that due by?
March. Was that March?
So March.
Yeah, it's in March. You get they send out the packet. Okay. At the end of the
People
year.
watching.
Yeah.
We have spent a fair amount of money the last few years on primary roads that are not heavily traveled. And in theory, those might deteriorate less because they're not so heavily traveled. There are certain roads in here, like when the road commission bonded Airport Road, that those roads get so bad, they just have to be done. And there's nothing about it. Maybe we can think that some of the primaries maybe we'll get lucky, and the primaries that don't get the heavy use will go behind the curve and not deteriorate as fast as they should. And that's the money we should aim at the local roads.
So I think, and that this is not a hard and fast rule. Maybe this is something that, I guess I have a question for Dan. Is this something that is part of that 5-year plan? Because I think part of what Alan is saying is that we first need to know which roads are those primary roads that are not heavily traveled, that we can afford to divert some of the money.
And that's where this whole thing starts with doing that countywide car count. You can see where the traffic is, where they're flowing. You can identify maybe a few roads that we should switch around, and then it also identifies these roads that maybe they can potentially stand out to life because they don't have as many miles on them. Or many vehicles, sorry.
Because they are low count. There are many low count primaries. In the southern part of the county, there's low count primaries.
So like we just said, we have no idea. We just looked at Clark Road when the 1997 is the last time we looked at.
Yeah.
That's not good.
We need a clear
Ability.
picture of what's going on.
Can we, using our traffic signaling device, Can we turn off a lane at a time for sections of some of these low count roads and just use the rejuvenation option? You know, the stuff that you gotta leave it for a couple of days, because it gets slippery. Is that something that, because I mean, you know, the thing is, they're not getting heavy use, so structurally they're gonna hold.
Yeah.
But they're still oxidizing and rust never sleeps and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So I mean, it's releasing its binder
Yeah.
into the atmosphere all the time.
So there are several products out. There's some that are rejuvenators that are intended to put some of the volatiles that cook out of the asphalt from the sun and the heat and restore that and keep the pavement's flexibility. But that was the idea behind chip sealing the year after you had paved the road
Right,
was
right.
you just painted it and don't even worry about that. There's been mixed review on some of the products,
Okay.
like how good they actually work, because you know, you have to do a core and test it to see what went back in.
Mhm.
I do know that there's some surfactant rejuvenators that like Wexford County has used on some shoulders. And he, like, 5 foot paved shoulder falling apart, nothing to it. Pulverize it, put rejuvenator on it and see what happens. And it got hard and it was smoother than it was. What it looks like now, 5 years later, I'm not sure. I have to ask. But there's some, like, some reported good things with those. Where you apply them is another question. And if a road's too far gone, you're not gonna do much to bring it back.
Right.
It would be more like South Airport, where it was reconstructed in 19. Like, if a rejuvenator was a good fix to keeping that road good, you would use it on that one, because chip sealing South Airport would be a disaster.
Yeah, and that's what Odie.
How many of our roads would you guys rule out for chip sealing because of the traffic count? Is it only South Airport, or are there a few others you're not gonna wanna do?
Chris can add to it, but I would say Hammond, South Airport, Garfield.
We're seeing that on Garfield already, that we chip sealed that,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yeah.
holding out.
Hammond, Garfield, 3 Mile probably, by the airport. 4 Mile might be a decent one for it.
So some of the best fixes,
Yeah, your
the
south
lowest cost fixes, our traffic counts now are too high to use.
on your,
We have to be, you guys know that, and we have to understand
Yeah.
that is what I'm.
At an ADT of 4,000, we switched the emulsion that we use for the chip seals to a higher grade emulsion. And then Warner is one of the prime contractors that performs chip seal work for us. And their recommendation is kind of once a road hits 7,000 ADT, they start to say that they are seeing
flushing and
mixed ability to guarantee the
So-
results of the chip.
So there's some roads, we've got to take it out to the structural overlay point. period.
yeah, and if you've got a critical road like a South Airport.
Yeah, okay.
Say 40,000 cars a day. Do you really want to take it out to that? So you could say that one's planned. If you start to see cracks in that road, just from your normal thermal expansion. A good fix that would be a preventative maintenance that would probably get you most bang for your buck would be to do a mill and fill on that road.
Okay.
And mill off beyond where those cracks have come through and put another layer of asphalt on. Because then you've still maintained that structural integrity of that base asphalt.
And that would be the lowest cost for roads like South
How much does
Airport.
that cost, like the mill and fill? How much per mile? How much?
200,000, depends on how
Okay.
thick, depends on how thick it is. Sometimes it can be 200.
Well, and it's lane,
It is what it is.
it's lane miles too. You have to realize the width of that is, it's not just length miles, it's.
We've never done one of those here yet, have we?
Mill and fill?
Oh, yeah.
Have we
Yeah,
done-
that was
Was it
Front Street. We did Front Street, Garfield, and 3 Mile by the airport. Those were mill and fills.
Did they all have crack relief?
We did put a chip seal underneath, and that's like Garfield from Hammond to South Airport. That was one of the first federal aid projects that was allowed to do that. Like, so,
And that road section is pretty good.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Reeve Riley thought we were crazy till it was 2 years later.
Right.
Well, they don't want to go last.
They don't like working on those roads.
Well, but that was
Yeah.
what year was it?
2020, because it was COVID. Because that's when they opened the bars up here and we were doing road construction and saw everybody show up.
That, 4 years later, that road really still looks
Yeah,
It held up well.
really nice,
and that was the mill chipping over there. So you can do things like that.
but not just a chip.
Right.
But our focus, when we're talking about some of this, just, is to get back around to figure out, to get some of these local roads that
Right.
are not,
Yeah.
we're not talking about, they'll have the methods for us for South Airport and some.
Yeah.
But the local roads is where we're the furthest behind.
But managing those other spots gets us there, so.
So, the roads are way better here than they were 10 years ago.
I think the traffic counts will absolutely help because that would help us figure out which primary roads are the roads that don't have that high of a traffic count. That we don't have to put sink that much money on into those roads, and maybe that's one possible way to move funding around. It may also help us to determine if we need to continue classifying them as primary roads. If we have to have a 1/3, at least 1/3, maybe that's something that we can make a persuasive argument to the state that it doesn't justify, being a primary road if what we are changing a local to primary has a much higher traffic. So,
And it could be something in the asset management plan if, like, it's the CRA and them that have a goal of 90% good and fair. But if you could ask the Transportation Asset Management Council before you turned in the asset management, we want to target 75%. And,
and
That's what Allegan County is.
There are other counties who.
yeah,
but do you have to make a case for it as to what, or you just said like, we want to be 75? No
yeah.
reason why.
Our goal is at 90%, ours is 75. And that would take care of some of those outlying roads that have lower.
And that's what I had been getting at as to how or why did we establish 90? I didn't even realize it was 90%, to be honest with you. I thought it was 80% because that's how it was presented, always I was told.
Yeah, and that was in the original asset management plan.
But that has always been a question.
Mhm.
It seems like it's just a policy decision by a previous board that said we just came up with 90%. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll reconvene. Okay, reset.
Rejuvenators, snake oil.
Phil, is any further information?
The only other thing yeah, so
Yeah.
like, as like other local road funding sources, I mean, MTF is pretty much the only one, unless it's on the NFC network, eligible for federal aid. You know, we don't get any extra funding. The state, even in Act 51, they say the funding we get from the formula is all their money that they're gonna disperse for local road support. But they do allow townships to use money returned to the townships under the state constitution to do maintenance and improvements on the local road networks. So I went and got some data from County Road Association
This is
and
fantastic.
with
I love
Scott's Magic on
It's
our
great
GIS, he set me up with an account and I'm starting to learn how to create maps, because I love maps. It's kind of have visual representation.
maps.
So what you're looking at is, if it's shaded in green, there's at least one countywide millage in the county. Could be a half a mil, could be 2 mils. I just wanted to just highlight, like look at across the state where there are county millages. And the number represents the number of townships within that
Yeah,
county that have at least one millage. So overall, there's only 8 counties in the whole state that don't have a township or a county millage. Few of them are the big ones like Genesee, Oakland, Kent.
And
Those are
I
urban.
They
can
don't need it.
understand how
yeah.
Kent
You know.
doesn't need it.
I
So
was surprised Luce up in the UP.
I was gonna
didn't
say,
have any.
Houghton, 9 townships have villages up there.
Yeah,
So it must have,
And they
it
have
must,
county mill.
and they have a county millage.
correct. So there are 26 counties that have both a countywide and at least one township millage. We are one of the 5 that have a county only. And then there are 44 counties that have a set of township. So out of the 1,420 townships, they're 1/3, 414 have a road millage.
Even Sheboygan has a county millage and 7 township villages. Chippewa County millage, 7 township villages.
But you can see
Benzie
it's
has
the
3
tool of
townships.
less dense
Yeah,
counties. I mean,
Kalkaska,
it's obvious.
yeah, Kalkaska.
Other than Washington,
County
how can we just like to attack
I-
people there?
You know,
But when you look at it, it shows the inequity in a, primarily population or density based distribution of revenue. When you see the less dense, and less populated counties having to resort to 1, maybe 2 additional millages if you live in a township, plus you have a county, just to try to bring some equity into the road funding that's coming into their region. It just set aside Washtenaw, which is a anomaly in many ways. You've got, really, when you look at it, you're primarily looking at your less dense, less populated counties. And the ones that are on the cusp, like us, I would say Huron, St. Clair, like they're bringing in a lot of township millages on top of the county millage, it looks like.
Allegan, 22 townships.
I mean, that's fascinating. Oakland, 0.
Well, they get
0.
10% of the MTF.
But I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, so it just goes to show how when you are, disproportionately based on this revenue allocation, just, going by density or whatever. It's so much harder for counties like ours to fund things that take less effort and time and money downstate. I'm just gonna say downstate.
Well, but I'm gonna kind of defend the formula because,
That's because you're a
You-
bureaucrat.
no,
State
yeah,
job.
I know, I've been called enforced. But when you go to something like lane mile usage,
Yeah.
you get screwed. Because the lane mile usage in Oakland, and Wayne County is tremendous if you change the formula.
Right.
So changing the formula is not,
Well, I'm not saying I want a lane usage
No.
formula. I'm just saying the way that we have it obviously continues
Does.
an inequity among
The
the
other thing
less
that-
dense township.
the other thing this doesn't show is that Grand Traverse County is one of the 5 fastest growing counties in the state.
Valid point.
So, I mean, we're almost at 10% over the last 10 years. So,
Does anybody know the township in Leelanau that has a millage?
Elmwood, actually.
Is it Elmwood?
Yeah. So, you talk about discrepancies and everything, but it's kind of like comparing Michigan to Indiana or Ohio, that hogwash. I'm not a big fan of millages, first off. you know, every single millage adds to the cost of home ownership. It makes you a renter. You know, you start to lose a sense of any real ownership. But I mean, in the state of Michigan, we have different topography. You know, some areas, it just may require a little bit more to deal with the changes and everything. I'd be fortunate we're not Bay County where we had to sell a bridge to a for-profit company that's still driving people nuts down there. I mean,
I got a ticket because I didn't realize it was toll. I mean, there's nothing there to tell you that it's a toll. Nothing. And I remember I got it like in the mail. I got thinking, I thought it was a scam.
right?
So I had to call the Bay City manager. And I was, and she's like, no, it's I'm like, no. Because there's no indication that there's a toll. I thought there was some zip, but I thought those were like cameras, so I slowed down.
Make sure they're gonna go.
Break it off. I slowed down.
You know?
Yeah, so
Well, I'm not saying I know the answer, but I'm saying there's a lot of discussion at the state level now on how we're gonna be allocating road funding resources. And this is a really valuable tool to look at how it's impacted people in low density counties with 1 or 2 million.
well, and again, this is one of these things where I want to get back to Phil. You keep track on the what's going on with this legislation, and you know, there's this funding package that they were talking about that's going to double our local road money. Well, fantastic, but it does it for every other county,
Yeah, so who's
and
gonna,
we have the same number of contractors,
it just makes everything cost twice as much.
and it's just like, you know, you
Yeah,
just
just
can't
raise
win.
Yeah. They'll
So,
raise their prices.
we need to, and I really have to get back on this particular platform. I mean, I've got the pulpit to a degree, at least as one of 5 for the next couple of years. We need to get Lansing to get off our backs, because ultimately it is going to be it's going to be Eagle or the DNR or frankly MDOT that's going to cost us all this extra money, or even the whole NEPA standard from the federal government. We need to talk to them. We need to get them off our backs. You know, they talk about in the Paul Bunyan, they talk about, you know, they give us a little sheet that says, well, you know, this is how much more it costs, and this is how much more we're getting. Okay, and obviously how much more we're getting is never going to match how much more it costs. Why does it cost more? It's because of all the environmental stuff. And we need to have that answer at the ready.
Man,
Sure.
I'm done.
that's a good question. Is there a way for us to calculate how much we have to do to build or fix the road? Like how much in permitting and how much is there a way to come up with a percentage of how much a project costs is actually not the project, but it's the extra stuff?
These guys know, they're laughing.
They must
You know what
know.
I'm trying to ask?
We know
They've got the
how to-
answer right away.
So like town line, we obviously had to get a permit if we were gonna put the,
Yeah, to quantify it, like, for the road commission, you'd have to keep track of how much time you put to doing a permit, but like, on my other hat, we budget hours for those things.
Yeah.
Right into,
is there a percentage that you can think of off the top of your head that the project cost that is not the actual project, but just getting the permitting and the
I have,
MPO paperwork done?
You mean the state permits?
Just all
the
the
Eagle?
paperwork, all the paperwork that goes. with the
Because we
project.
don't need permit for our.
Well,
I think that's what you're asking.
Okay, now, there's now there are those direct costs where we have engineering costs that, you know, the engineers are spending time doing permitting. Okay, then there's the ability to not have or the lack of an ability to have a gravel pit. In, you know, some communities have legislated out the ability to have a gravel pit. You know, Charlevoix, Leelanau had a fight about it. So it makes it harder for us to get materials and aggregate here in any kind of affordable way. And then what does it take to become a contractor? And why do people not want to start a business? Because they have to buy I mean, there's a lot of things that are secondary costs, but they're incredibly large.
And I don't know if you can fully quantify it. I mean, what does it cost for a paver nowadays? What did it cost back then? I don't think, I really think the government regulations, not the equipment regulation, because I think you can plug a number in and make equipment work. I don't think you could get through the government regulation stuff. We can't have any more gravel pits because no townships will allow that.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of court decisions that make it so difficult. When I went for my gravel pit, it was on the front page of the Record Eagle, and for almost a year, about every month. The planner I had said, Al, I'm gonna tell you when you're gonna go for a gravel pit. The last guy I had in Charlevoix was a real successful businessman.
He committed suicide.
He
because
did
of all that.
commit. First, his business went bankrupt. Then his wife left him. Then he committed suicide. And I'm telling you this story because this is the path in Michigan because of the strength of townships. And we can't fix that here unless we have a way to fix that. We can't have any competitors for our work because it's one company, the only township that they have a substantial gravel pit in. One company owns the whole township.
But then this goes back to being a low density, low population area. There are extra costs and we have less funds that go to us than the ones downstate that have more contractors and more materials on hand and can arguably have a lower cost per each project. And so when you go back again to the funding that comes this way, we're not taking into effect that we're a geographically dead end location and that we're going to have issues with having contractors. Those are discussions I would love to hear our representatives and senators have, because those are the people that need to sit at the table when we're talking about statewide revenue allocations and why it's so different to live in Luce County and Antrim County than it is to live in Wayne County and Oakland County, and how we distribute our funds. That I'm glad to see people have township millages and county millages to help them, but it's a shame that you can see why they're needed just by looking at the map.
We're just sitting there minding our own business and it cost us 50 grand to get our MS4s. Would be off
25.
25,
Around 20.
Yeah, 20,000.
Yeah,
20,000, but that's just the start.
Just
cost.
start, right?
That's our-
Well, that's just to get the
Wrong
permit, that's just to get the application, the paperwork.
We haven't done anything, haven't done any project. And now we have another federal regulation that costs us.
So,
I don't know.
I think part of the new legislation for the road funding, I thought that it had a provision that did address gravel mines being taken out of the zoning, just like oil wells are.
They've been crying.
But there's another provision in this House bill that does address gravel mining and as being exempt from zoning. But obviously, because I think the gravel mining lobby is, they have some big donors and contributors to some of the.
I went and listened to some testimony a few years ago, 3 years ago. Went down and sat in the Senate room and listened to them, but the other side is really well financed too.
Right, sure they are.
They are.
Yeah, they are.
But anyway, we have these costs we can't.
Right.
Now we actually have some assets. We have a gravel pit. We could do more with it. We could also invite a contractor to come in and use our gravel pit as their source of materials so they could make products for us. Without our making an investment in that. And that would be a way to open up competition ourselves, but we're kind of diverging from.
Well, it's.
We want to talk about the 5-year plan and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's what you're talking about and what others are talking about, it is kind of related to funding. You know, this is how we can increase our ability to generate more funds. So it's a relevant discussion, but yeah, we should move on to our next topic because we could talk about
Good stuff, Bill.
in quite detail.
Yeah, Bill, this thing that
Well,
I
I
filled
will-
here is unbelievable.
Yeah.
This number here.
Yeah.
Switch the focus on the primers.
Yeah, I think this number really caught my eye, which is the local millage.
Yeah.
You know, millage funds, it's 5 years, yeah, but it
Thank
was
you,
very,
Bill.
yeah,
These
that
are
was
really
very
good.
informative. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. All right, Dan, so it's your turn to talk about the 5-year plan. And what you expect to.
So I think we kind of touched on it a lot. already through all of our conversation, but I'll kind of do some highlights here again. Obviously, this is a lot to process. We're sitting here talking about it. I mean, we talked about starting off the engineering and then we talked about the accounting and like, how do you put all this together and get a clear picture of it? And we're constantly behind the eight ball. Every year, we're trying to build the plane on the runway. We're trying to build projects in the year that we're getting them out, and we're running staff out of here. We're overworking them. So how do you switch that and get ahead so we can actually get a plan to best do everything we're talking about, the finances, staff? The best thing I can think of is that we get a 5-year plan and have a common goal where everybody knows where they're headed and where our direction is gonna be. And once you have that 5-year plan, we can put out these projects to have other engineering firms bid them, and they're on the shelf, they're ready to go. So when fall comes, we look and it's already built, it's already done, it's 80% complete, our staff has to take the additional 20%. And then that gives us the chance to start to get ahead, to actually start to think about how do we save money, how are the projects, different things like this. But overall, the 5-year plan, to just come up with, well, which road do we do? Which road do we attack a lot of this 1,200, mile mess? I think we really need somebody to help us put all this data together. We've collected great data. We're about to collect really good data at the car count. So this is the next step in progression. And then there can't be all of a sudden things that pop up, unfortunately, that like, oh my gosh, this is the most important road. Okay. Well, starting to look at our next 5-year plan, we got to work through this 5-year plan before we add in this. Also, we divert all our money over. We got to kind of come up with a plan, work our plan. There could be emergency situations that happen. The one thing that I'm still trying to process, I think it'd be a good thing to talk about, is the local match plan at $500,000. Not a lot of townships were very interested in working with that. I don't think everybody fully understood it. I think we're starting to get somewhere here. I was going to talk about this in my manager's comments. Garfield Long Lake last night both approved the Barney Road project. They're bringing funds to a road project. So how do we match that if we get this 5-year plan and all of a sudden a township wants to do a project? Well, that's going to mess up our 5-year plan a little bit. I think we need to set a goal of if a township wants to match or work with us, they need to let us know by like August, because we're going to start doing our budget October, November. So that helps plan out that next year. But we need to set a certain amount of money aside that we can match with them. And I think that's one that I've been preaching that for a while. The only way we can really get ahead is we don't have enough money to do it individually. The township doesn't have enough money. We put the millage money, if you put all 3 sources together, you can start to do some projects. But I think that's going to be a really important conversation that we need to have. Is that local match program, is that $500,000 enough? And how do you do it? If, you have a township that comes to you and says, I want to spend $500,000, we say, well, you only have $100,000 match that you can have. But no other townships interested in doing anything, but you're holding on to that funds. You say, if nobody else identified a project this year, we're going to move it to who wanted to partner with us. So
That's a good question.
sorry, that's kind of a little long roundabout way to talk about the 5-year plan.
I don't have a problem with that, especially if we're talking about matches, because then you can kind of plan that into the process as well. That's interesting.
Would Lansing may change all this, just so everybody knows, they're looking to change.
Yeah, I'm not gonna hold my breath.
The 5-year plan could be a 6-month plan here.
I have 2 questions. One is, what would you need from us to facilitate the 5-year plan? Because that's the way to go. And then secondly, is that local road match thing that we have even worth it? Or it would be better for us to just ask each township to rank your roads and then tell us what your top 5 are?
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
yeah, I think,
I'm just asking.
no, I think.
But with the guarantee that we're gonna do something though, if that's the case,
The
because
townships have, we can only spend 50% of our funds on
Right.
township roads. So
Yeah.
you have to have the township buy into supply that 50%. So they can rank their roads of which ones they want, but which ones are they willing to bring money to the table?
Well, that's,
But I think I thought that the part of the purpose of the 5-year plan was also to identify the roads that and rank them in some order of priority in terms, or did I misunderstand my conversation with you about?
It's gonna rank on priority that we can do with what we have for funding.
Right,
So we can't do every road, but yeah,
Sure.
we're gonna identify the roads that we think that we have funding for.
based upon the condition.
from the next ride. Yeah, that's why I say it's a whole, when you start to look at everything that feeds into this, it's a lot for somebody to try to put together.
Right. So I mean, necessarily part of that list or whatever, however, will identify which townships there are on in, and that would be one of the data point sources for the townships. That, okay, we didn't know that this road was in this condition and we could be done for this amount of money. Maybe they want to say, all right, we'll, put up some money towards this project. But I think the larger point is that, first of all, the 500,000 match. I always have a problem with that term match because it's our money. It's not like we're giving it to them. We have just set it aside.
That wasn't.
For them to come and match.
For the,
Right.
The really
Sorry?
that plan,
It's set aside for them. to
what
match
was,
with them.
Right.
was for, but it allocated how much between the townships, as if the townships were all gonna wanna take 100% advantage of it,
Right.
and they don't.
Right.
So it was
Right.
based on population and road miles
Yeah.
from a previous administration.
Right.
That said, okay, the board said, we have $500,000.
Yeah.
How are we gonna allocate that? Well, if everybody comes to the table, you just can't always pick one township. So here was the allocation, and that's been misunderstood as that's the money they can use.
Yeah.
That was really, to me, an internal guideline about if Garfield and Whitewater both want millages and we're gonna run out of allocation, how do we allocate it? The plan doesn't work as it exists at all, because it was really about allocating our money to
Right.
the township.
Right.
And then anything extra would be township.
And anything extra
That's how
would
it
be
works throughout
township.
the state.
But how it's been used in some of the projects has been, well, the township is giving its match because instead they use that allocation. Well, no, that's not your
They
match.
don't understand that that's our allocation.
That's our allocation. That's not your
We shouldn't
match.
can the whole thing, but we do have to have I like Dan's 5-year plan, but I think things are always gonna be, changes are gonna happen. And if you 5-year plan might be able to address 90% of the road work that needs to be done, but we need to have some flexibility for things people do to us. They talk to their commissioner and say, lean on us and say, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You represent us at the.
Or things completely
board.
off.
Or like Potter Road.
Right, Potter Road, right.
Potter Road. Disintegrate.
How much do we want to set aside each year for those kind of things? And then this is what the plan is to start to work your plan.
We need flexibility
Right.
and we need more money. Even if we have a good plan, if we don't have the money.
Yeah.
But we talked about now Joe and I have been on here, Jason's the only lifer practically. But Joe and I have been on here, we're in our 5th season, and early on, the discussions were anybody who brings money to the table kind of moves up the line.
Yeah.
Because we're doubling the effect of the
Sure.
road commission's money.
Absolutely.
And whatever our new plan is, has to take to recognize that. Now,
Right.
quit talking, one more thing. Peninsula Township is sending out in their letter, their new quarterly newsletter. The Peninsula Township millage is bringing in $1 million to the road commission.
Yeah, they
And
want.
last year, the road commission spent in Peninsula Township $555.
I know that's.
They're a donor to the library system too.
But
Yeah.
if we need to understand that their contribution should be, I believe we need to understand that their contribution should be recognized. Maybe they're not bringing it in through a special assessment district, but they're bringing it in through the millage.
But part of that counter to that argument also, Alan, is the fact that we are spending a lot of that local millage on primary roads
know
that
that.
all people use, okay?
I know
If we
that
took
they
that
all
approach,
drive the road.
If we took that approach, I think Garfield Township can make an argument that their percentage of the millage was probably higher than any other town, just because of the size. So what, we should expend that same proportional
It's a
percentage?
geographical dead end.
Right.
That's part of the problem that they face on everything is they're a geographical dead end. So the people that are driving out there, let's set aside tourists, I'm talking about locals, are people that live there. I'm not passing through Peninsula Township to go to Costco or go
Yeah.
drop my kid
No.
at school or
There-
whatever. So that is, that is, and I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that is inherently
Yeah,
the situation of living in a dead end geographical location, which one could argue we kind of are too in Grand Traverse County, because we're sort of, the tip,
It's
right?
not legal at all, but it's kind of getting there.
Yes.
So there are inequities there too. Again, there are inequity upon inequity of being in this county. So that I understand why they would feel.
yeah, I have completely sympathized
Yeah.
with their position, where our residents are paying this much in taxes, where they're not getting the
Well,
return.
I think we
But,
need to
you
have
know,
some way to
yeah.
recognize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We spent $1.2 million paving a primary road in, I'll say Grand Township, but it probably wasn't effectively, what Carlin Road in?
Carlin?
It's Green Lake and
Carlin all the way down to, I would call it Carlin Road, all the way down to County Line Road.
Is it Green or Blair?
No, I think that's Grant.
That's great. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
Grant.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And we spent $1.2 million on a primary road in Grand Township, and they contributed.
But it's a primary road and it's
It's a primary road serving 900 people a day.
And that's the point. That's the point we've been making
Yeah.
all along, is
Yeah.
that we have to take a much closer look
No.
at primary road.
Having said all that, I mean, remember Peninsula Township also said that they don't want us to own 37 either. So I mean, there's that, you gotta kind of throw that in there.
But because they feel like they have not, we haven't recognized.
No,
their
we
contribution.
represent all 13 towns.
Right.
And they can vote against the millage.
To think
I
about.
don't want to vote against.
I-
it.
I think I understand, I completely understand where they're coming from, but it is a slippery slope, because I think there are a lot of other townships, much bigger, who probably raise a lot more in millage funds that can take the same approach. And that would be.
I would say they're the
I don't
top.
think I don't think you can find that.
For the number of
A lot of
roads,
nonsense.
the reality
A lot
is,
of nonsense.
the lane miles in Peninsula Township are nothing compared to Garfield, and they pay about the same in taxes.
Yeah.
In all fairness, though, we were all identified when we looked at this, that we didn't spend it anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we just picked on Peninsula Township.
It doesn't get spent.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's,
But
that,
that's our
what-
number one.
yeah.
We got 4 roads this year.
I mean,
So we did some work up there this year.
I mean, that is why we are having this discussion, is because of the inequity between local road
And-
funding.
This is
You
a
know?
slippery slope. When we do Frankie Road. We're basically doing Frankie Road for TCAPs. Let's just be honest. I have 4 other people that live in this county that go to different school systems that are gonna be subsidizing that road for TCAPs. So. that's the problem with that commission. Everybody pays in,
Yeah,
you don't necessarily see that benefit right in front of your house,
but they probably use that road to go to Meyer.
but they might use it.
So, I mean.
But I'm just saying
Yeah.
that when you use.
Well,
that
Joe
logic-
also mentioned in prioritization that locations by school
Sure.
were part of the prioritizing ranks
Yeah.
on things, hospitals. I think you said hospitals. schools,
Hospitals,
things like that.
churches, but yeah.
So there's, again, it's geography,
It's
right? Like,
It's just more complicated than
Yes,
one.
Exactly.
one
It
to one to one ratio.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, but I can understand that
Aren't
argument.
Tuesday reopening bids for the
Our
5-year
5-year plan, we're gonna do that via committee, so.
when I became a county
Can you
commissioner,
explain to the people that
That's the
might be
17th,
watching
right?
or are gonna watch us what you're talking about?
So it's not just gonna be one person and staff looking at it. We're gonna have, board and staff, we're gonna rank all of the bidders and see which one we think fits best for.
And they're going to do what for?
As far as creating the
They're gonna
5-year
help
plan.
create the 5-year plan.
we need that.
And that's not for us, that's for anybody that may watch.
When I became a county commissioner, I didn't understand much about local government. I knew that there was townships and there was a county. And I didn't understand why the road I lived on was never fixed. I just didn't. I didn't understand. I pay my taxes. I'm a homeowner and I pay taxes and the road I lived on was never fixed. And so I came to the road commission. I showed up at a meeting, no idea what I was doing, and I kind of sat there and I spoke at public comment. And, I knew several of the commissioners. It wasn't like I was walking blindly into a room, obviously. I appointed some of them, being a county commissioner. But I remember it dawning on me, as much as I know maybe a little more than the average person about local government, it didn't occur to me that when you live in a subdivision, nobody's fixing your roads. Like, I didn't know that. I never thought about it. I understand why now, but I didn't know that back then. And I think that a very large percentage of the people that we represent don't know that either.
Yeah.
If somebody that's literally elected to office, which I was, I did not know that I live in a subdivision. And when you look at these numbers, which are great, and thank you, you can understand why we would never get to my, we're talking about Peninsula Township being geographically a desert like subdivision, which would be beyond that, right? We don't have the money to go to places that are geographically deserted, that are still through roads. We're certainly not going to people's subdivisions. And I think as we got more word out about the SADs, I think some people understood it. I think we did a good job communicating, but there's other people that are angry and upset and don't understand why I pay my taxes every year. And I just don't understand why my subdivision road is never going to be in the 5-year plan. We weren't even looking at it in the pie chart. There were no subdivision roads in the pie chart. And that's okay. And I understand why, but I think we owe it to people to have a good communication, just like Alan said about Peninsula Township and having a response. In general, there should be a good response to people that don't understand why, if they want the road in their sub to be fixed, that you have to have an assessment on your tax roll with the township. And it can be brought out, I think, as far as 15 years or something, from what I understand. But that is a big part of it. We're sitting here talking about primary and local roads. I misunderstood as a taxpayer and a citizen. I thought that included the road that I live on, and it never will. And that's a lot of roads, and a lot of people live on those roads that pay taxes and want to understand. And that's okay that we're not doing them, but I do think it should be acknowledged or maybe communicated better. The 5-year plan is not going to include our subdivision roads on it. When you talk about prioritizing roads, the person that lives in South Creek subdivision or Stone Ridge subdivision is never going to see their road on there. And I think that's really important for people to understand, because I know I didn't understand it until the people of the road commission explained it to me.
Several years ago, there was somebody on the peninsula who had their neighborhood. The road was fairly decent, but it was starting to get cracks, and it wasn't something that we were gonna go and take care of. So they went around to the neighbors, hey, would you guys all be willing to pay, I don't know, AMO or whoever it was to seal this road if it's okay with the road commission? And we just kind of said, yeah, okay. And they came up and they spent a couple of grand, I think, they basically seal coated their road, if I recall correctly. And it was, I mean, it makes it look nicer. It might actually fill cracks a little bit,
But I also think it goes to the point that we were talking about earlier. If any township wants projects done, then they have to let us know what those projects are. So, I mean, if, for example, if Peninsula Township feels that we are not addressing some project, other than Bluff Road, obviously, then it has to come from the township. Again, we're talking about, the township has to let us know what the priorities are and what roads, and then we have to look at our funding and a project planning process. But outside of that, I don't know how the road commission could, just spend money, in any township without having any idea what they're working on or whether there is a need for that project.
They're the ones that hear from the constituents directly because they're elected to represent them.
No, I'm assuming that part of that newsletter or that request for information probably has to do a little bit with Bluff Road. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I understood that. But,
Well, all I'm saying, so if you think the townships have to be in this, then the townships have to be included in somehow in some provision has to be in the 5-year plan for them down the road as we go.
And again, on the discrepancy of money spent it may not get spent a lot this year, but next year it might be a heck of a lot. It just, that's the argument right there. It might not happen this year, but we might have
I think the 5-year plan is, the way I understand it, is that it's going to be used as a tool for this board to then develop rules or whatever as to how to, include townships in that project. The 5-year plan is not going to come in and say, well, this is how the township should participate. That's up to this board. to then take that information and decide how are we going to include the townships in that planning process. At least that's what I think, unless you, I mean, I don't know what the scope of the 5-year plan is, but I don't think it's gonna do that kind of a deep dive as to how policy should be, how this plan should be implemented.
No, but like you said, it's definitely gonna spark those kind of
Right.
conversations separately.
And that will be up to this board to decide as to how we use that information and include the townships in that discussion of how they want to do that as part of the allocation process, I suppose.
If they hear from a lot of citizens that somebody wants, they want a certain road done, then they could come to us and we would hopefully have the data to put together, well, this is how much it would cost, this would be the way that it would come about and what the shares would be.
Yeah.
That would be the
Or we
thought.
can share that, or we will share that data
Yeah.
with all the townships as well.
Absolutely.
And, to say like, this is what we found out. So this is, these are the roads in your township. So anyways, anything more on any of that? Okay, so we will move on to our public comment. All right,
I would like,
Doug, come on up.
I didn't plan on saying anything.
No, no.
Just get back there, but-
I don't know how you can sit here and not.
I know. After all that.
But you made the comment about the monies and the townships telling you that, well, we're gonna give it back to you. That money was told to us, I can remember just as clear as day, that here you go, you could spend it. And we looked at it and I would say 2/3 of the supervisors that were there at that meeting said you might just as well keep it and spend it the way you see fit, because what it was wasn't going to
Right.
be.
I recall,
It was going to give that over a 3-year
Yep.
period, and then take that, whatever they give number 4, then they would take that and
Yeah.
the road commission would make their decision on what they were gonna do with it.
Right,
And that's where that comes from.
okay,
In that, is just to kind of clarify that for you. When we're talking about the roads and that, I mean, I know I've said a few things to Dana on it, on a couple of roads over in our township. I could complain that, yeah, our township paid X amount and we haven't received nothing. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as for the whole county. And that's the way I look at it, and that's what it was meant for. 90% of our residents believe I'm paying a tax to have the roads fixed. And you're gonna fix my road in front of my house.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
exactly how they feel.
Yeah.
And that it was, they would, I believe, would vote if each township just had a road tax. They would vote for that before the county one every day of the week.
right,
I think so
right.
too.
Because then they're guaranteed that money will be
That's
spent
gonna be
there.
spent
That's
right
right.
there
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
their own township.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
that, I've got or a couple of questions too. Does the road commission still do wedging on roads? And kind of as short overlays?
Sure.
You've done that on, I can't, it's probably been about 4 years ago.
We did.
On Brackett Road. And it's held up. I'm surprised, but it's held up. That road there, I'm not sure if that's considered a county road or a main thoroughfare. But when something happens out on 72, that's where everybody is sent.
Mhm.
And we probably all remember the accident that happened this
Mhm.
past winter out there where the lady was killed.
Yeah.
At 5 hours.
Right.
Going down
Yeah.
that
Oh,
road
yeah.
there and semis on that.
That it was not a good ride. I got caught in.
You got caught in that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that day, that
Hey,
morning.
well, I'm glad you did. So you know
Yeah,
what that.
I know
road
exactly,
is
yeah,
like.
I was like, why,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean, if some wedging could be done on that road, it would help it. I know it's not going to solve the problems. And then it's just like, I got a call from a resident on the way in. First, they were complaining about Bunker Hill and 31, and they live on Deep Water Point Road, and they said, when are you gonna get this road on Deep Water fixed?
Geographically isolated.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know how many cars are going down there unless you are
I don't
living
know.
there, yeah, or living there.
but, that's, I mean, he was on me to
Yeah.
get the.
Sure.
road
Oh, I
fixed.
understand, yeah.
But-
you know.
And then do you, as far as like crack sealing, up in subdivisions then? Is there any
I
of
mean,
that?
we
that was
still
done?
do some maintenance in some of those areas too.
Especially after they've had a sad, because I know up on Holiday Hills,
That's
I
one
think-
of,
I think
that's
we
one
do
of the
that
things,
for the first 5 years.
yeah,
do you just for the first 5 years?
yeah.
Okay.
So,
That was one of our
Yeah.
promises, with some of those sands, that we're supposed to follow up and maintain each year.
So that's some of the things I kept going through my mind, and I just wanted to explain.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that's part of the discussion we were having with Doug is that I think the way it was communicated to the townships may not have been clear on the
No, I-
allocation process, so.
It's,
That's the way it was
Yeah.
communicated to us.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's easy.
Right, no, that's why I think we have to revisit it, because clearly, like Alan was saying, that's not, the way it was communicated and what the intent was are two different things.
It'd be good to get input from supervisors, like at one of these kind of meetings, like we're having, whatever we want to call this meeting, local road meeting or whatever. Because ultimately, we want to work with them and make it work. So just here, I'm glad you were here. Thanks for staying all night through the
Yeah.
meeting, because just hearing that feedback is really valuable, and just getting opinions, not only from you as a supervisor, but from what your constituents say when they call. We could come up with a system that's more user friendly, that really takes advantage of the opportunity to work together. Because like you said, Alan, it doubles our money in our.
Well, but Doug brings up something, the plan was developed last time a little bit in a vacuum. And then we gave it to the supervisor and they hated it.
Yeah.
We should have known right then that it was too late. We didn't take enough input.
Right.
Yep.
On the way in, so we have to have a plan,
Sure.
but before we implement it, we have to bounce it by the
We have a
people who are
meeting, yeah.
gonna contribute.
So-
I don't think we should just always have a free flow of
No,
ideas aren't bad, but we need to have a plan and then we think we can say, do you like this? Do you think you can live with this?
And that, I think that would be a great thing if you could get a few or all of our, supervisors in and talk about it.
If you offer food.
So, so I think, the idea I had was, once we have the 5-year plan, we would then reconvene, and maybe that would be more of a strategy session, because then we will have all the information and that we need from the 5-year plan, and that would be a good starting point to invite the townships and start having a discussion as to how to implement that 5-year plan and what are good rules.
and it is gonna be interesting because something big's gonna happen by the end of the year, I can just tell you, because the governor really, really wants to have a legacy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're talking about literally doubling the money that's allocated for the local roads to the townships. So, I mean, if they even get close to that, it's a significant thing.
Yeah, that would be a real.
So, and then it also affects our plan, because do we just then hire more contractor hours, or as we alluded to, do we have at least the threat of competition from within by having the equipment as necessary to do minor fixes or more major fixes? I mean, I think the money would be almost better spent buying equipment that sits idle.
Something I've been thinking about if we could get this funding, because obviously Palmer's isn't gonna be able to take care of all northern Michigan all of a sudden, that do we look at some of the maintenance things that are gonna try to save our roads with, maybe we bid out an entire township and have somebody come in and ditch that township for us, because we just can't get caught up to get to it.
Right.
And some of these, those other kind of items, we bring in a tree contractor and say,
So those are gonna save our roads if we do it, if we
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, we're bidding out the entire county to get all of our street, I don't know, but we gotta find a way to spend that funding. Cause it's not gonna be all go to asphalt.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
All right, we'll just go into the manager's comments at this point.
Sure. I mentioned Barney Road, very excited, to build a partner up with 2 townships. And hopefully it's a sign of things that we can keep doing, moving forward. That project, we're talking that it'll probably be like September before they can get to it.
Okay.
But, we're still have to get that out the bid and get finalized, but we know both townships are at least committing to the engineer's estimate, so very excited about that. High ridging operation, we finally got the numbers totaled up on that. We did 170 miles this year. We figured we did about 20,000 tons of dirt off the side of the road. Roughly what that works out to is 2,000 dump trucks. We did that in 5 weeks. The way the winter worked out this year, where it like lasted and then stopped, and then all of a sudden we have summer in the grass. We didn't get to do it as long as we did last year, but actually we did 200 miles. So for being a couple weeks less than we did last year, the guys did really good. So that was pretty great. Another thing that just came down yesterday from our MPO. We're still trying to get through this MS4 program, get that figured out. They're now requesting that we have a plan of how we're gonna spend our funds through 2050. So
Who is requesting this?
the MPO,
2050?
Long range plan.
they want a long range plan of where. our funds are going.
Just make something up for it. Throw it into an AI, tell them how many lane miles we have, how many primer, and have a whip out. It'll crap something out.
Fix the road that these are really bad roads, these are really good
Yes.
roads. How do we fix these?
You know,
This is
So
the
now
plan.
Jason, you like the robots?
Oh, I love the robots, but I just don't like,
Is that all?
I like Accusar.
All of them are given by the MPO,
Oh, the MPO for
all the MPO plans, but.
Yeah, that's an easy
It's a
one. Like I
really
said.
long range thing there, but
Nobody's jumping.
I just found it interesting that they probably just released this MS4. We're just trying to get moving on there and get moving on.
So what you have to actually do, in order to prepare such a plan, we have to hire an actual consultant?
No.
We can do it in-house, can't we?
It just came
He can do it. Give him the data and he can put it to his AI bot. The bot that he has working there.
They want road names identified in years that we think we're gonna get to.
We'll give
We don't
them.
even know
And with bonus alternative to a song.
2050.
Somebody would hold people to it.
That is
They'll be
bullshit.
like, my road was in that plan back in twenty
Yeah.
twenty-five.
That's cool. That's just somebody justifying their job.
It's pretty preliminary. It was discussed at the TTCI Technical Committee today. They said that there are some examples of other MPOs where the Act 51 agencies within that MPO have done work. I spoke with him afterwards and asked if he could recommend a couple to look at for examples, and he recommended the MPO down for Bay County and also Kalamazoo. So we got a reference point to get started to look and see what they've put in their plan out for that time range, their long-term plan.
Is this a legal requirement or is this an MPO kind of?
You don't
technical
get your money
committee?
requirement.
Or is it a new requirement?
I think it's involved in once you're an MPO, there's just certain things.
So how come we're learning about this
Cost of
a year,
admin.
2 years after the MPO was created?
It seems to be the way things are going. We get an email and all of a sudden you're told you gotta get working on
This
something.
is what it's
So
like
can
working
we-
for the feds.
can
I think
we-
I'm almost done and they throw another job out and then you get there.
I just remember my notes.
Okay, let's.
So can we demand they give us their budget for 50 years and where it's gonna be? This MPO thing is
It
just a
sounds
bunch of
like
crap.
It really does sound like
I
that.
remember.
Well, look, we're not permanent, we have a sunset clause in there. I mean, I'm getting less and less enthusiastic about this MPO, to be very honest with you. I wanted to give it a shot at that time. But on the other hand, I have discussed it with Dan, and we do get a financial benefit from that, so it's not like we walk away.
It might
we're
not matter
walking
after
away.
October.
Well, I mean, yeah, and look, I mean, yeah, it may not matter, or nothing may change. We'll just have to see what happens with the Senate. So, anything else? Any other comments?
Nope, that's.
Okay, well, I'll start with Commissioner Lehman, Commissioner's comments, questions, future agenda.
Welcome so much, thank you.
All right.
All right,
Oh, I was gonna say that you would say the same thing.
Yeah, no. Just East Bay Township meeting, they were talking about the DTE repair on one of our streets over at the Pine Grove area. Apparently, you've got that under control. DTE, of course, cut up part of our road. Then I guess the complaint was by the township that, well, if you're gonna fix, the fix was only like half the road, and the rest of the road looked crappy or something. So it only didn't go across anyhow. They said, well, fine, and then fix the whole thing, and the bill comes due, and they're like, well, the road commission can pay for half of that. And as it, I mean, it's just a small section. You've gone through this, and basically you talked to East Bay Township, and they've apparently agreed to pay half or something like that.
So I know the question is, like, when the utility company comes in, why don't they just do that whole section? You can't require them to replace the whole road just because they cut into a little section, but you try to do it on section lines. So they were doing half, pushing like the other half unpaved.
Right.
The township approached us saying, we want you to pave that. And I kind of said, well, why don't we split it and try to make a project out of it? It was like $7,000 on each side of us. So
And it was
we
within
made a little project out of it.
It was just interesting, the discussion, but it's the whole, every time DT, and this gets me back to the whole, every time the utility wants to do work, either in our right of way or on our roads themselves, and they tear stuff up, and I actually brought up the point, I mean, that federal project that we spent over $1 million for on Parsons Road, it just gets done, and then what does DT do? They come through and they cut through all of the aprons onto the side streets, and it's like, come on. I mean, could we not have known this stuff? And honestly, I'm not impressed with DT in the last couple of years because of stuff like that, because they did the same thing to us over here at M72 and 22. Just waiting to the last minute to let us know, oh, well, we're going to have to do this. And then their actions actually cost us money and wear and tear. Barney Road, I mean, it suffered from that. Then so right now, Garfield Township and Long Lake Township are going to be paying a little extra, and we're going to be paying a little extra for Cedar Run Road repairs down the way. So I mean, all of this stuff, we need to really lay down the law with some of these utilities in some way that we can legitimately. Because, I'm sorry, you can't do the work unless you're gonna pay to make it right in the end. That's just my beef, and spawned on by spring, from the East Bay Township meeting. Tree work. Are we still doing tree work right now? And is this a good time of year to be doing tree work? I mean, trimming certain trees, not a good idea, right?
Yeah, we are doing tree work right now, not to the degree we do in the winter. We're still doing this project work. It is oak willow season, so unfortunately, we're not able to do any oak trees right now.
Well, that was a concern by one constituent who reached out to me and said, hey, look, seeing some tree work, isn't this off season? Is this a good idea?
Unfortunately, tree work never stops for us. We cannot keep up and catch up.
You take the dead stuff out. I mean, there are enough dead branches over.
Every time I start to see that flag blow out there, I know Central Dispatch is about to start calling, because we're gonna get trees falling in the roads.
Okay. We were talking about primary roads and how much we can, how often we can recategorize. I'm still, I realize there's a little extension that goes into Leelanau County, but I still believe that Goodrick Road is a logical primary road instead of Tilton Road in Long Lake Township there. And neither road is in good shape, so
Goodrick is worse.
Yeah, Goodrick, yeah. So
There's a traffic light.
well, and it is the through,
Right.
the through road.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really think that when we start talking about the primary roads and we start talking about reclassification, that's worth doing, and it's worth getting with the Leelanau Road Commission and getting that little stub that they have there converted over as well. It just makes sense. There's the light there, right? The other thing, Phil, I just really wanted to follow up with you. I know you're really paying attention to the legislation. I've talked about it. Is anything moving forward? You've been really on top of
The
this
House
stuff. Yeah.
has a bill passed, but the Senate hasn't.
Okay, the House bill is still what it is, and the Senate doesn't want to touch it yet until the pressure comes down from the top.
Yeah, so the House bill had a neighborhood roads fund for primarily the urban counties, the put money back into local roads without any kind of match? Okay.
The rub is going to be how that plan is gonna get funded.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Well,
There's a lot of moving-
there's a place.
Yeah, that's where the rub.
Isn't the Senate out for a while now? Yeah.
I think July 1st is their target.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
I was
July
thinking
1st
much
is when
later.
they're supposed
Okay.
to have it, and apparently they are,
Well,
Speaker Hall has
Listen,
not.
I'm
really
just,
committed to-
insofar as, you know, actual, the financial end of it and everything, I am counting on the aspirations of a particular individual to make this happen.
President.
Yes, to be president, to make this happen. I'm just saying, you know.
Anything
I
else?
was told it does pass its immediate funding, October 1st.
Yeah, that's
So
definitely
the
right.
cash
It's right
for that
before the end of the
December.
year. Yep, budget time.
All right,
I just got a couple things. Mayfield Township is over the moon with the Herring Road maintenance project. They couldn't believe how well it turned out. And Potter Road, that's probably my number one complaint that I've been getting is Potter Road.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that is on. The dock has been approved and on the docket. Right?
Mr. Horn.
Gray Road, any chance for a temporary traffic light? I know it's not our project that's causing it, but it is significant and we aren't even to full on budgie season, like the backups and watching people get frustrated and really make some dangerous, turns because they're sick of sitting there. And I just wondered, I understand it's an MDOT project and they didn't label it as an official detour. So therefore they're not going to allocate their funds or whatever. There's just nothing that we can do on that. I don't know.
Well, they could still go.
I don't want to wait until there's a horrible accident. And I understand it's not a super high traffic road because of all the traffic right now, but it kind of is on Long Lake coming down. And then people pull out from Gray because they're frustrated. And I drive to my Leona office once a week and that's the route I take. And I watch some pretty horrible actions by people every time I do. And I just don't want to wait till we get more traffic in and something happens. So I just don't know what our resources are or what it's really asking, but I just wonder if it's a possibility for the county road commission to step in if MDOT didn't.
For those, if there are people watching this meeting, I
Wake up.
want to say this. I know that there was a ticker article a couple of days ago
Yes.
that somehow conveyed the message that there was going to be, that we have a project for 5 Mile Road, and they quoted a certain commissioner on this board as making a statement regarding a plan that was in place, that was discussed several years ago to dead end 5 Mile Road. Since the publication of that article, I've received several emails opposing that to dead end 5 Mile. I just want to reassure everyone, A, there has been no plans or projects discussed, let alone finalized regarding 5 Mile Road. And if and when we get to the point of discussing any construction project on 5 Mile Road, and which, if it ever includes a plan to dead end 5 Mile Road, we will absolutely seek input from the area residents before we make any final decision on that. So please understand there is no project right now for 5 Mile Road. The other thing I wanted to bring up was for the communication committee, other than the zipper thing, videos and public relations and education programs. The other thing I would like for you to consider is because of the construction season, putting out safety videos. Our people, last year our people were involved, had narrow misses on people hitting our trucks, lawnmowers, people.
hit.
And maybe we can have do some public education campaign on alerting the public on the need to, watch out for road construction crews and things like that, which could benefit our people. So,
I will add that to the list.
yeah, those were the only things that I had. All right, seeing nothing else, well, take a motion to adjourn. I'll support it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. They are adjourned.
That was too much for me.
Try to look at
What's that?
Glad I gave the motion to adjourn.